The story begins with a man sitting opposite Lady Wildenbeston in a marriage arrangement meeting, asking her if it is her first time, while she thinks to herself how cliché and repetitive this scene is. Then he smiles and replies that it is his first time as well, and he begins to talk about himself, explaining that he enjoys studying and collecting information, and that at the academy he would diligently attend classes and maintain high grades while his friends were having fun. She listens to him with obvious boredom, thinking to herself that this conversation is extremely dull, while he tells her that he isn't slow enough to need to study all day, but that he worked hard to raise his grades even in subjects where he was already excelling. He adds that he excelled to the point of qualifying for awards in many subjects, which made Lady Wildenbeston wonder to herself why her mother, who married for love, said that an ordinary man was most suitable for her. He suddenly cuts off her train of thought when he suggests that once they decide to marry, they must discuss the division of properties and lands, and his crude frankness shocks her, making her wonder to herself how one could be so direct. She pulls herself together and asks him if it isn't a bit too early to have such a discussion, so he laughs, calling her naive, and assures her that such matters, especially those related to money, must be settled early. While he stresses the importance of financial matters, a loud sound is suddenly heard, like a door being kicked open, which makes him jump in shock. The man wonders anxiously about the source of this sound, while she seems more interested in the matter than afraid, thinking that events have just become more interesting. Soon, the Emperor's personal knights appear, entering the hall with steady strides. Then, His Majesty the Emperor himself follows, and she looks at him in utter shock and amazement. She wonders in her mind why he is here. While he walks past her table, the Emperor stops and calls her by her full name, Isla Wildenbeston, so she looks up at him in astonishment and answers in a faint, questioning voice. The Emperor looks at her with a confident smile and asks what his fiancé is doing here. His words stun her, and the word fiancé, coupled with the possessive pronoun he used, echoes in her mind. She feels dizzy, as if the world is spinning, and wonders if this is a dream and what is exactly happening. As her consciousness fades and she falls from her chair, her memories drift back to a night that happened 3 years ago. That night, she declared the end of her unrequited love for him while she walked away, saying that she was tired of it and that she would disappear from his sight as he wished. She had confirmed to him that she was done with unrequited love. She remembers how she cried while promising him that she would never appear before him again. She even begged him to find someone wonderful and live happily ever after. But in the end, he remained standing in his place and did not turn to look at her even once. That memory ended with her crying bitterly and calling herself a fool. After that night, she secluded herself from the world for 3 full years, and the events shift to the day of the Emperor's coronation, which was a few days before he barged into the marriage arrangement meeting. Ayla was talking to another lady, wondering why His Majesty chose this specific day to be his coronation day, and Ayla answered her that out of all the days, he chose her birthday. Her friend, Lady Rinny de Leon, commented, wondering how she fell in love with a man as insensitive as that. Ayla replied that she herself would like to know the answer to that question. Lady Rinny noticed a beautiful bracelet on Ayla's wrist and complimented it, so Ayla told her that it was a birthday gift from her brother Elvin that morning. She added that the gift wasn't just the bracelet, but it was accompanied by a survival first aid kit, which left her friend confused. Rini asked if her brother was always fond of jokes, and Ayla replied that the problem is that he is completely serious all the time. During their conversation, one of the attendees announced the arrival of Lady Rinny of the Delian family and Lady Ayla of the Wildenbeston family, welcoming them to the Imperial Palace. As the crowds headed inside, Ayla felt a desire not to enter, but she thought she might take a quick peek for a single moment. She found herself after that in the Great Imperial Forest and noticed that the atmosphere there hadn't changed despite the passing of 3 years. She recalled her memories of when she was lost in that forest, crying and calling for her parents and brother. She suddenly hears rustling among the trees, and Crown Prince Robros, who was 8 years old at the time, appears before her, asking about her identity. She seems afraid, so he asks her if she is lost. Then he smiles and reaches out his hand to reassure her, asking her to come with him. They walk together, and he tells her that the Imperial Forest does not usually open its paths to strangers, but it seems that it liked her. He asks her to keep what she saw today a secret, and while she is confused, he explains that everyone who sees that thing remains silent forever, but he will make her an exception. He approaches her and wonders what he should do now that they have a shared secret. Then he surprises her by saying that she will have to become his bride. Ayla returns to the present and pushes these unnecessary thoughts out of her head. She decides with determination that she will not remain bound by painful memories and that she has stood up and moved past everything. She raises her hand to the sunlight, admiring the beauty of her bracelet, which looks even more magnificent under its rays. She contemplates the red stone in the bracelet and realizes it is not a ruby, and wonders what type it is. A voice comes from nearby, telling her that the stone is rubellite. She turns to find Crown Prince Robros in front of her, who tells her that he expected them to meet. So she wonders to herself in amazement why he is here on his coronation day. Robros tells her that this gemstone, the rubellite, is cherished by his mother because it resembles the color of his eyes, and that its name was given after him. He compliments the bracelet, saying it suits her, and she thanks him. Ayla adds that the bracelet is a birthday gift from her brother Elvin, and Robros repeats the name Elvin in surprise. Robros asks her if she remembers his secret, so she asks him which secret he is talking about. He clarifies that it is the secret that she discovered first, so she nods, remembering. She realizes that this is the reason he suddenly acted with such familiarity with her. She tells him that when she looks at him now, her heart does not race, and she does not feel anything at all. He seems shocked, so she adds that after she gave up on him 3 years ago, she managed to forget him completely. But she explains that her letting go of her feelings does not mean that she would reveal others' secrets, and she reassures him that she will keep his secret. Robros tries to say something, calling her name, but another voice interrupts them, asking about her whereabouts. Her brother Elvin appears and tells her that they were looking for her, and that the coronation ceremony would begin soon. Elvin tells His Highness the Crown Prince to precede them, confirming that he is the one who will accompany Ayla. Ayla stands between them, looking confused and anxious about this tense situation. Robros asks Ayla for permission, requesting that she give them a moment, as he has a private matter he wants to discuss in private with the captain of the Knights. Ayla agrees to his request and announces that she will withdraw, leaving them alone. After Ayla leaves, Robros turns to Elvin and asks him if he has something to tell him, so Elvin initiates by apologizing. Then Robros asks him, speaking to him as a friend, why he attributed the gift he presented to Ayla to Elvin, as if it were a gift from him. Elvin explains that 8 years have passed since Ayla began to have unrequited feelings of love for him, and that she needed 3 years to move on and forget, which means that she suffered for 11 years in total, and she only regained her smile recently. And Elvin begs Robros, hoping he will take that into account. Suddenly, Robros kneels on his knee, so Elvin panics and asks him to get up immediately for fear that someone might see them, but Robros admits that everything that happened was his fault, and he declares that he is ready to do anything to win back her heart, begging Elvin to try to understand his feelings. Elvin stands there, deeply moved by the situation and sighs, confused by the Crown Prince's persistence. Events go back in memory to the day of the coronation, where the announcer declares the entry of His Highness the Crown Prince into the hall, inviting the attendees to welcome him with all dignity and respect. Robros appears in all his majesty, adorned in his official attire. Ayla stands amidst the crowd and sees him as wonderful at that moment, but she soon notices that his knee is dirty, which raises her question about whether he had been subjected to something. And when Robros turns in her direction, she panics for a moment. She thinks for a moment that their eyes have met, but she dismisses this thought quickly, convinced of the impossibility of that happening, for he is the man who never turned to look at her even when she confessed her feelings to him, so a sarcastic smile appears on her face. Her friend Rini approaches her and draws her attention to the fact that she is smiling for the first time in a long while, and her friend expresses how happy she is to see her smile again. Ayla is touched by her sincere words. Later that night, Ayla sits alone, holding the first aid kit that her brother gifted her, and when she opens it, she finds inside a letter from him, telling her that her smile is the most beautiful in the world. Ayla smiles and acknowledges to herself that her brother and friend are right, and that the feeling of smiling is truly beautiful. She makes a decisive decision to get rid of everything related to His Highness, and she closes a box containing her memories with him, breathing a sigh of relief. The box was filled with many letters and diaries full of memories, so she wonders what she should do with the diaries in particular. She browses through the diaries quickly with serious features. Then she throws them into the box again, confirming to herself that this past must disappear completely. And with eyes filled with determination and insistence, she decides to erase everything and be born anew. Following this decision, she goes to her mother and tells her excitedly that she is going to the marriage arrangement meeting, so the mother receives the news with great happiness. Ayla remembers that she finally managed to forget Emperor Robros, who broke her innocent heart, but at the very moment she was taking a step toward a new beginning at the marriage arrangement meeting, he, himself, the one responsible for everything, appeared and caused this huge uproar with his shocking announcement. It was natural then, and in light of this shock, for her to lose consciousness and faint. She wakes up suddenly, screaming in disbelief, wondering how she could be his fiancé. And when she regains consciousness, she finds herself in a luxurious bedroom that she immediately realizes is not her room. She breathes a sigh of relief and reassures herself that everything that happened must have been just a dream, for such a thing could not happen in reality. She gets out of bed, still mocking the idea of being his fiancé, confirming to herself that it is a dream, inevitably. But she stops suddenly when she hears her mother outside, wondering about the reason that might push His Majesty to barge into her marriage arrangement meeting, and she expresses her anxiety about Ayla, and that it is impossible to understand His Majesty's motives. And at that moment, Ayla realizes with shock that what happened was not a dream. The two ladies continue their conversation, and the other lady wonders if the Emperor is trying to take revenge on Ayla because of her previous insistence. But Ayla's mother silences her immediately, warning her against uttering such words. Ayla is stunned to hear the word revenge and is overcome with confusion and fear. The two ladies notice her standing, so they call out to her, while she is still immersed in her questions about why the Emperor wants revenge on her. The two ladies rush to her to check on her condition, and she answers them that she is fine. But inside, she was thinking bitterly, wasn't his ignoring her for 12 years enough? And now, he wants revenge too. She feels that this situation is extremely ridiculous, so she resolves to go face His Majesty. Her mother tries to stop her, reminding her of the need to follow official procedures, but Ayla continues on her way with confidence, telling her not to worry, which leaves her mother in confusion. The other lady tells her to leave Ayla alone, revealing an amazing secret, which is that Ayla knows all the secret passages in the Imperial Palace. And when asked how she knows that, she answers that she learned it, or so she heard. Meanwhile, Emperor Robros wakes up in his suite. He sits on his bed and thinks about how she has never changed, despite the passing of 3 years. Suddenly, a number of infiltrating assassins appear in his room, and he asks them sarcastically about the condition of someone named Uncle Till. Then the leader of the infiltrators orders him to die quietly, and a violent fight quickly breaks out in the room. Outside, a servant was wondering if His Majesty had woken up. And when the servant enters the room, he finds the Emperor standing quietly by the window. The blood-stained bodies of the assassins were lying on the ground, but the Emperor appeared completely calm as he gave the servant permission to enter. At that moment, Marquis Vice Roden, the Deputy Imperial Speaker and head of media, bursts into the room, screaming, calling for His Majesty. The Marquis tells the Emperor that the newspapers are in a huge uproar, and asks him the reason for his leading the knights to Lady Wildenbeston's marriage arrangement meeting the day before. So the Emperor answers him that his question is ridiculous, and that the reason is that he has become the Emperor. Then he adds with a smile that since he has become the Emperor, it is natural for his way of dealing with her to change. The Marquis is shocked by his words, mutters with regret for the poor Duke's daughter, then asks the Emperor if he is serious. The Emperor answers him with a sharp and confirming look that he is, of course, serious. The Marquis recoils from the intensity of the Emperor's looks and the strength of his determination. The Emperor asks about the whereabouts of the ministers, so Marquis Vice Roden tells him that they have been waiting in the meeting room for some time, so the Emperor decides to head to them immediately. And indeed, the Emperor meets with his ministers in the room, where he stands before them holding some papers to discuss. Suddenly, the doors are opened with force, and Ayla breaks into the hall with great anger and screams at His Majesty, wondering what he has done for heaven's sake. She advances toward him with angry steps and points at him, demanding him to explain exactly what he meant, while the ministers surrounding him look at her in astonishment and shock. The Emperor raises his gaze from the papers and is surprised by her presence, calling her by her name. So she freezes in her place, having just realized the situation she put herself in. Ayla realizes her grave mistake, remembering that the Emperor at this time of day is usually alone. But she forgot that 3 years have passed since then, and that things have changed due to the presence of the ministers. And among those present, her father, the Duke of Wildenbesten, was sitting, putting his hand on his face in a sigh that expressed his despair and extreme embarrassment at his daughter's reckless behavior. The Emperor handles the situation skillfully to save her, and apologizes to his ministers, claiming that he completely forgot his previous appointment with her, describing himself as rude. Then he announces the postponement of the meeting to another day and orders all the ministers to leave, keeping only Lady Wildenbesten in the hall. After the session adjourns and they are left alone, Ayla nervously thanks him for covering up her embarrassing situation, so he kindly replies to her that it is not worth thanking, so she apologizes again for barging into the place, confirming that she did not know there was a meeting. The Emperor reassures her, asking her not to worry, and tells her that he was about to come see her anyway, so she wonders in amazement about the reason for his desire to see her. The Emperor confirms that to her, and asks her to listen to him since she went to the trouble of coming, explaining that the matter concerns romance. Ayla is surprised by the word and her face turns red with shyness, but before the moment is completed, her brother Elvin intervenes suddenly, saying that this is enough. Elvin looks seriously and firmly, asking His Majesty to stop what he is doing. The Emperor is surprised by Elvin's intervention and calls him by his name, while Elvin directs his speech to Ayla, ordering her to come to him immediately. Amidst exchanged looks of confusion, the Emperor refuses this interference and stands in front of Ayla to prevent her from leaving, confirming that he will not allow this interruption to continue and orders her to stay. Ayla finds herself stuck in an embarrassing situation between her brother and the Emperor, where each of them pulls her by an arm in a clear and competitive struggle in which they exchange looks of challenge and anger. And in the midst of this tug-of-war, Ayla contemplates the word romance and suddenly realizes that the Emperor meant something related to the Imperial Bulletin and not what she thought was a romantic confession. Elvin firmly demands the Emperor to leave his sister alone, but the Emperor refuses strongly, claiming that she is his. Ayla reaches the maximum level of impatience and shakes her hands to escape from them. She screams at them, asking them to stop immediately and rid her of this tug-of-war. Then she turns to her brother with a fake smile to justify the situation, claiming that she was here only for work, which surprises both Elvin and the Emperor. And Ayla continues weaving her story, explaining that His Majesty asked for her consultation on a romantic novel, so the Emperor goes along with her and seems surprised, wondering sarcastically if this is truly the matter. Ayla continues in her explanation, stating that the Imperial Bulletin is closely linked to the image of the royal family, and therefore the novel that will be published in it is considered a matter of extreme importance entrusted to her. And she points out that he chose the right expert, for there is no one who takes romance more seriously than a 19-year-old girl. Ayla takes advantage of the situation and scolds her brother, blaming him for interrupting her important work in this annoying way. Elvin feels suspicious and directs his question to the Emperor to verify whether this speech is true. The Emperor feigns anger and arrogance, wondering rudely if Elvin is accusing him of lying and denouncing his behavior with excessive boldness in his presence. Elvin falls into the trap and bows, apologizing profusely for the misunderstanding, and asks for permission to leave immediately. After Elvin leaves and closes the door, Ayla stands next to the Emperor, feeling tense and anxious about her actual involvement in the Imperial Bulletin novel, while the Emperor looks at her with a feeling of guilt, and she thinks to herself that he should have cleared up this misunderstanding before the matter developed and became complicated. Ayla announces with a smile and confidence that she is ready, so the Emperor seems a little surprised by her response and his eyes widen in confusion. She quickly asks him to tell her about the nature of this story, while the Emperor thinks to himself that a little misunderstanding will not hurt in this situation. The Emperor begins to recount his tale, explaining that it is a story about a man and a woman who separated, where the man was surrounded by many enemies who targeted him and targeted everything he cherished. And he adds that the man loved that woman very much, but he was living in constant anxiety that she would be exposed to danger because of him. Therefore, he decided to hide his feelings toward her until he possessed enough power to protect her. So Ayla listens with interest and expresses her understanding of the matter. The Emperor continues, explaining that the woman, due to her not knowing his intentions, continued to confess her love for him without despair, despite his cold rejection of her every time. So Ayla comments on the extent of that woman's sincerity and dedication. Features of sadness appear on Ayla's face, and she points with sorrow that the story seems a bit sad. Ayla wonders if the man could confess his feelings to her in secret to avoid this pain. So the Emperor answers her that his enemies were watching him from everywhere and lying in wait for him. Ayla lowers her gaze with understanding and mumbles that she realizes the difficulty of this situation. The Emperor continues his story, describing how the repeated rejection hurt the woman deeply, which ultimately pushed her to leave him and go away. And he adds that the moment the man got overwhelming power, he rushed to stand beside her, but she told him that she no longer loved him. And as a result, the man made his decisive and final decision. Ayla anticipates with excitement to know the rest. So he tells her that he decided from now on to dedicate everything he owns to loving her and winning her heart. So she asks him with eagerness and anticipation what happened after that. The Emperor smiles quietly and tells her that the story ends at that point. Ayla is shocked and amazed, wondering disapprovingly if this is really the end without any other details. The Emperor asks her about her opinion, so she feels the pressure and tension, thinking how he asks for her opinion on an incomplete story like this. Ayla holds her head in confusion, reminding herself of the need to think carefully, because this novel will be published in the Imperial Bulletin and it must be perfect. Ayla adopts a serious posture and decides that she must answer professionally, so she tells him frankly that she does not think the story is suitable for commercial purposes. The Emperor is surprised by her direct criticism and wonders about the reason behind this opinion. Ayla explains to him with excitement and uses her hands to clarify that the story lacks the exciting element that captures the hearts of the masses and arouses their interest. Then she smiles kindly and corrects herself, saying that it is too early to judge the story, so it is impossible to evaluate a work after hearing only its introduction, for the curtain has just risen. risen. The emperor looks at her deeply and with interest while she continues her speech, confirming that readers cannot evaluate any work until it is completely finished. Ayla notices some papers on his desk and expresses her admiration, pointing out that she did not know that he wrote romantic novels during state council meetings, so the emperor confirms that to her. The emperor looks at her with a quiet and affectionate look, saying that the play has just begun. Ayla smiles confidently and concludes that how events develop from this point depends on her as the expert. Events shift where the emperor stands seriously, offering his sincere apology to Lady Wildenbesten, so Ayla is surprised for him to add that he should have apologized to her first. He approaches her and apologizes for his direct interference in her marriage arrangement meeting, and for his describing himself as her fiancé without obtaining her consent. So Ayla remembers that this was the main reason for her coming to meet him. The emperor admits that his action was reckless and expresses his deep regret for causing damage to her reputation. Ayla's pulse accelerates from his words, and she tries to hide her confusion with a fake laugh, saying that it is fine because it was just a marriage arrangement meeting, warning herself inside against getting excited or confused because of this situation. The emperor smiles and asks her with a meaningful tone whether this meeting was meaningless to her as well. Ayla answers with a bright smile and complete confidence that it does not matter, for she can always arrange another marriage arrangement meeting. Her words fall like a thunderbolt on the emperor, and his features freeze from shock, while she continues talking coldly, pointing out that the capital is full of nobles. And if it does not work out here, she can always return to her province and marry one of the families subordinate to them. The emperor stammers, not believing what he is hearing, and asks her what she is saying, but she continues with excitement and a new suggestion, adding that she might travel to study abroad and build relationships with foreign nobles, and that idea would not be bad at all. Ayla puts her hand on her chin and closes her eyes in fake thinking, and mentions that she heard about the presence of many handsome men abroad, wondering with intentional disregard about the name of that country she heard about. The blood boils in the emperor's veins, and his facial features darken completely from intense jealousy, and he repeats threateningly her words about studying abroad, building relationships, and handsome men. So Ayla answers him with fake innocence, confirming that this is exactly what she is thinking about. The emperor looks down in silence and tension, so Ayla asks him with a smile if he is okay. So he answers her in a faint voice, wondering about the reason that drives her to do unnecessary things like these. Ayla is surprised and asks him to repeat what he said, so he raises his head with features covered in frustration and screams, wondering about the reason for her doing those things that have no need. The emperor hits his chest forcefully, and with a look full of hope and disturbance, he screams, demanding her to marry him if she really wishes to marry. Ayla's eyes widen from the horror of the shock, and she does not understand what she just heard, while the emperor immediately puts his hand on his mouth, having realized late the size of the words that rushed from him without thinking. Ayla stands frozen in her place, looking at him in astonishment, and wondering to herself whether she misheard. Ayla looks at him with confusion and distress, and repeats his words about the engagement and marriage, wondering about the motive that makes him utter such things. The emperor answers her with agitation, justifying that by him becoming the emperor now. He looks at her with a deep look, calling her by her name, while she retreats a little and her eyes begin to shed tears, as mixed feelings swirl within her. She looks at him with a firm look and rejects his offer decisively, which leaves the emperor in a state of astonishment. Memories drift back to the past, when she was offering him a piece of cake with happiness and excitement. But he was ignoring her completely and looking away, and she remembers how he always treated her as if she were invisible. She also remembers how the noblewomen used to whisper and mock her behind her back, wondering with schadenfreude about the reason she continued to pursue him despite his continuous rejection of her. Considering the matter embarrassing, but they were nonetheless amazed at the extent of her persistence. She used to stand alone in the ballroom carrying a cake plate, surrounded by looks of contempt, pity, and cruel whispers that described her as not knowing her place, which made her vulnerable to everyone's mockery. Ayla returns to the present and tears well up in her eyes, and she tells him painfully that after all the insults he inflicted on her in the past, he comes now to ask for that, confirming her complete rejection and clarifying that she no longer harbors any feelings for him. Ayla turns to give him her back, announcing that she will pretend that she did not hear anything of what he said, and she says goodbye, moving away from him while the emperor reaches out his hand, trying to stop her in despair. Ayla closes the door behind her, leaving the emperor standing alone in the middle of the room with features covered in disappointment and regret. Ayla collapses crying while she presses on her chest, consoling herself that this is the right decision, and vowing to herself that she will not allow anyone to manipulate her feelings again. Suddenly, she hears a voice calling her by her name. She finds before her a noble lady with a warm smile, inviting her to approach and telling her that she will see a familiar face. And Ayla realizes that this lady is Empress Abina Zahard, the mother of the current emperor. Ayla remembers how the empress used to treat her kindly in the past, and how they used to laugh together. so she turns quickly while she wipes her tears, trying to pretend to be composed. Ayla welcomes her with respect. Ayla advances toward her, wondering about the familiar face she spoke of, to be surprised by seeing a lady with red hair standing beside the Empress, so Ayla calls her by the name Randall, with amazement and joy. Randall Beatrice smiles and asks Ayla about her conditions, and Ayla remembers that Randall is her close friend whom she met at the villa she escaped to during her period of isolation that lasted 3 years. Ayla holds Randall's hands with excitement and asks her about the date of her arrival to the capital and why she did not tell her about that. So Randall answers her that she arrived that day only. The Empress intervenes, clarifying that she is the one who summoned Randall, and reveals her intention to host a large dance party soon, pointing out that she needs the help of some young noble ladies who will lead the society of the future. And the Empress adds, while she spreads her arms with happiness, that gathering in one place is what forms true bonds, and she considers that such gatherings are the peak of the prosperity of high society. The Empress takes Ayla and her friend Randall's hands kindly and looks at them, wondering if they are ready to provide help to her in the coming period. The two girls agree with excitement and confirm to Her Majesty that they will exert their utmost efforts, for Ayla to realize after that she has suddenly become, and without introductions, a member of the preparatory committee for the large dance party. On the first day of the work of this committee, Ayla heads toward the palace while she feels some annoyance and tension from the new tasks. As soon as she arrives, she is surprised to see the Emperor in the hallway and thinks about taking a longer path to avoid meeting him. But her attention is attracted to something else that arouses her curiosity. Ayla peeks from behind the wall to find her friend Randall standing and talking with the Emperor alone, and wonders in confusion what they could be talking about at this time. She watches the scene silently, where Randall appears smiling in a friendly way while the Emperor listens to her. Then Ayla decides to turn around and leave quietly without interrupting them or revealing herself. Later, Ayla sits to have tea with a group of noble ladies, where Rini expresses her astonishment at the marriage of a girl named Maria, then moves to the more important talk, wondering about what was rumored about the Empress summoning a young woman from the Beatrice family. Rini directs her speech to Ayla, wondering if this young woman is the friend she met when she escaped in the middle of the night and isolated herself in the southern province. So Ayla sips her tea with tension, annoyed by the use of the description, escape. Rini continues her speech, amazed by the matter and hinting at its extreme strangeness. So Ayla asks her about the face of strangeness in that. Rini clarifies that the Empress has never met that young woman before at all, yet she summoned her specifically to the capital to register her first appearance in high society. Then Rini whispers, wondering if the Empress intends to introduce her to the Emperor, for Ayla to answer with complete coldness and lack of interest, confirming that this matter does not concern her at all. Their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of Viscountess Fontiel and Lady Silka, where Fontiel mocks in a loud voice, wondering about the time when high society became a loose place to allow those who used to chase the Emperor to show her face in it again. Silka joins her in mockery, expressing her shock at the boldness of someone who escaped in disgrace and disappeared from sight to return. So Ayla looks at them coldly, thinking that they have never changed and have not stopped their chatter. Ayla greets them with a fake smile, pointing to their long absence. So Fontiel wonders with disdain about the reason for Ayla's presence in the Imperial Palace today. Ayla thinks about the extent of their annoyance and how they always look at her with inferiority, then answers in a quiet voice that she is present for the same reason they came for, which is helping in the preparations for the dance party of the Empress. The two women laugh, sarcastically, and Fontiel describes Ayla as stupid for taking compliments seriously, and Silka hints at the extent of the embarrassment the Emperor would feel if he knew of her presence and participation. Ayla answers with a confident smile, pointing out that she spoke to His Majesty a few days ago, and that he was sharing with her the details of an interesting romantic novel, wondering sarcastically if this is the Emperor's way of dealing with someone he feels embarrassed toward, which causes the two women to be stunned and disbelieving. Silka loses her temper and screams at Ayla, confirming that everyone knows the extent of the Emperor's hatred for her, and that her lies will not fool them. Ayla challenges Silka with a provocative smile, suggesting she ask the Emperor herself to be sure. So Silka becomes confused and stammers severely. Ayla approaches her, wondering sarcastically if she lacks the confidence to do that, for Silka to get angry, and denounce Ayla's boldness in talking to her in this way. And Ayla tells her that the reason that made her continue to tell the Emperor of her love, despite his repeated rejection in the past, was not ignorance of her status or stupidity, but it was simply because she chose to be brave and hold on to her feelings and never give up. Ayla directs her sharp looks at Silka and asks her to stop belittling others' feelings, especially since she never had the courage to utter a single word to the person she loved, for Silka to be stunned by the cruelty of the truth and her words hurt. Meanwhile, Randall walks happily with light steps in the hallways, wondering if she will be able to make new friends at this gathering. She opens the door optimistically and enters the room, expecting to harmonize with everyone. She greets with a bright smile as soon as she enters, to find herself amidst an atmosphere charged with tension. The noble ladies turn to her, and soon Fontiel begins mocking Ayla's dress, describing it as shabby, and considers it a brave choice in a sarcastic way, while Ayla demands her to respect general etiquette. Fontiel tells her that a woman must always take care of her appearance and that she feels extreme embarrassment on her behalf as a female. Ayla gets very angry and defends herself, shouting that a woman's value is not determined by her appearance or her clothes, and scolds Fontiel for her cliché and reactionary thoughts. Fontiel continues to provoke her, claiming that she is saying that out of anxiety, and wonders if she intends to attend the party with this terrible appearance, for Ayla to ignite with anger, wondering if wearing newer clothes gives Fontiel the right to insult others with such rudeness. Randall intervenes confidently to respond to the mockery of the two arrogant noble ladies, where Randall confirms that Ayla will wear a dress designed by the best designer in the entire Zahard Empire. And she adds that the matter will not be limited to the dress only, but she will be prepared from A to Z to shine at the dance party at the hands of the best experts, which leaves Fontiel and Silka in complete shock and confusion. Fontiel wonders disapprovingly and with disbelief if this speech is true, questioning with mockery the ability of a young woman who lived in the countryside to understand the latest fashion trends that befit the capital. These words provoke Ayla, who approaches sharply, wondering what Randall is saying, for Randall to clarify with a smile that Ayla herself was not aware of this matter yet. Randall puts her hand on her chest and reveals with pride that His Majesty the Emperor is the one supervising Ayla's preparation personally, and that she is the one who received the direct orders to implement that. And Randall continues her speech, confirming that the Emperor is looking forward greatly to this event, and that he intends to dress Ayla, whom he described as his partner, in the most wonderful and luxurious dress, for Ayla to freeze in her place from the horror of the shock and wonder to herself about what is happening for heaven's sake. Ayla stands stunned, her eyes wide, and confusing questions spin in her head about everything Randall had been saying all this time. And the word his partner echoes in her mind with extreme disapproval and lack of comprehension of the situation she was suddenly placed in. Events go back in time to about an hour ago in the Emperor's office, where he was sitting with Randall and asking her with interest about her favorite color, for her to answer him that it is sky blue, so he nods understandingly. Then he continues his questions, inquiring about her favorite gemstone, so she answers that it is blue topaz, for signs of complete satisfaction to appear on him. The Emperor continues his precise interrogation and asks her about her favorite design, for Randall to answer him with impatience that there is no specific design she prefers. The Emperor is surprised by her brief response. Randall tells him that she answered all his questions until now, but she clarifies to him that Ayla is not the type who is very meticulous or complains about her tastes. Randall smiles and explains to His Majesty that what really matters to Ayla is not the details of the gift, but the person who presents it to her, and that the amount of her happiness will be proportional exactly to the extent of her love and the status of that person in her heart. The Emperor remembers Ayla's harsh words when she rejected him strongly and told him that she no longer harbored any feelings for him. The Emperor becomes engrossed in deep thought, remembering the sensitive political status of her family, the Wildenbesten family, which is considered the only family capable of keeping the imperial family under control thanks to its wide influence. And he remembers how her father, the Duke of Wildenbesten, was extremely close to the former emperor long ago, as well as to his younger brother, Til Zahard. The Emperor recalls in his memories how Til Zahard strongly aspired to the imperial throne and the right of succession, and how he tried to threaten Robros's position as crown prince. But Robros's exceptional abilities prevented Til from constituting a real threat to him. He also remembers that after the former emperor abdicated the throne, Til lost his status as a member of the imperial family, while her father, the Duke, took a completely neutral position without siding with any party. For the matter to end with Til outside the palace bearing the name Kelton, which is the name by which he still lives, hiding. And based on that, Rini realizes the real motives behind the Emperor's sudden closeness to Ayla at this specific time, convinced completely that after ascending the throne he became greedier, and that he seeks to absorb the influence of the Wildenbesten family to become the strongest and most influential person in name and in deed. Randall apologizes to her two friends, justifying her ignorance of these political intrigues with her long isolation in the countryside, while Ayla admits to herself that she was expecting this exploitation, but she pretended to ignore it and did not want to believe it. Ayla asks them to stop raising this topic, while Rini was thinking with bitter sarcasm about the extent of the situation's triviality. In the past, when she was attached to him and chasing seducing him, he did not reciprocate any feelings, and now he is getting close to her for the sake of power, warning her strongly against being deceived by the Emperor's tricks. So Ayla reassures her, confirming that she is well aware of that. Rini asks her with anxiety if she is capable of holding on and facing it. So Ayla turns to them with steadiness and confirms that she has forgotten all the pains of the past and was born anew as a stronger person, which arouses her friend's admiration and amazement at her hardness, announcing with determination and insistence that her heart will never shake and that she is ready to move forward with confidence. At that moment, the Emperor appears carrying a huge and charming bouquet of colorful flowers and greets her with a gentle smile. Ayla and her two friends are surprised by this sudden appearance, while the Emperor approaches, clarifying that he came specifically to tell her something important before his accumulated work occupies him and prevents him from seeing her for a while. The Emperor looks into her eyes kindly and asks her directly if she accepts to be his official partner at the opening party of the grand dance. Ayla feels extreme confusion and psychological pressure and blames herself secretly because she did not clarify her intentions and reject him decisively in the previous meeting, and she mumbles in confusion, trying to find a polite way to evade this offer. The Emperor presents the bouquet of flowers to her, confirming that despite his knowledge of her hesitation, he decided to wait and come to her, for Ayla to freeze in her place without finding the appropriate words to respond. Ayla looks at the flowers and at him in confusion and tension, thinking that his action puts her in an embarrassing situation, and describes him as a selfish person who imposes his desires, while he calls her by her name, wondering about her answer, waiting for her final response. Ayla gathers her strength and tells the Emperor that she does not wish to meet him, begging him not to appear before her in this way again. And after she rejects his request officially, he remains standing in his place holding the bouquet of flowers while she moves away from him. Quickly, Ayla proceeds on her way toward the forest, trying to convince herself that she did the right thing, and that she managed to say what she must quietly and without crying. But her eyes soon betrayed her and began shedding tears. And in the midst of her distraction and sadness, her foot suddenly trips and she falls to the ground. And while she is lying on the ground, hurting from the fall, unaware of what she will hear after moments, a man's voice reaches her ears, talking about another person he describes as a scoundrel, and claims that he possesses evil eyes and demonic power. So the idea immediately crosses Ayla's mind that the intended is Emperor Robros with the red eyes. Ayla hides among the bushes and eavesdrops to discover a conversation about a horrific conspiracy, where one of the two men assures the other that 60 assassins, disguised as escorts to the nobles, are scheduled to enter the imperial palace. So the word assassins stuns her and shock takes hold of her. And her terror increases when she hears that they will all be disposed of in the midst of the big party without anyone noticing anything. One of the conspirators continues his speech with mockery, saying that regardless of their possession of red eyes, they are in the end just humans, and it is impossible for them to be able to face 60 men by themselves. But the other man, who seems to be the leader of the conspiracy, scolds him, describing him as a fool, and reminds him of what happened to those who infiltrated the imperial palace in the past, and their matter was revealed. And he clarifies to him that these infiltrators were not imprisoned and there were no traces of their escape, but their bodies were never found, leaving him wondering about their unknown fate. The leader answers with a cunning smile that no one knows their whereabouts. But the certain thing is that it is not the cell, and for this reason, he stresses the necessity of killing him, threatening his companion with a fate more horrific than the cell if he does not comply, for the other to submit to him, announcing his understanding of the matter. Ayla puts her hand on her mouth in a state of terror, realizing the gravity of the situation and that His Majesty Emperor Robros is in imminent danger. She rushes immediately to the imperial palace and asks one of the guards to meet His Majesty even for a moment. But the guard tells her strictly that the Emperor has ordered not to allow any person to pass. Ayla tries to know when she can meet him, but the guard refuses to give her a specific date, contenting himself with saying that he will listen to the purpose of her visit only. Despair and anxiety take hold of her, and she wonders in confusion about what she must do and who she can tell about this dangerous secret. She remembers the conspirators' words about the fate of those whose matter is revealed, and concludes that if there were those whose matter was revealed, this means that there were also those whose matter was not revealed. She reaches a conviction that she must tell him herself directly, because no one will believe her, and that she needs to find someone she trusts. She heads quickly toward the entrance of the Empress's palace and tells one of the servants that she has an urgent matter she wants to report to both the Empress and the Emperor. But the servant tells her that the Empress has contracted a cold and that she is undergoing isolation currently accompanied by His Majesty the Emperor. So Ayla asks him with anxiety until when this situation will continue. The servant clarifies that as a precautionary measure to prevent the spread of infection at the party, they will undergo treatment in isolation until they recover completely, and that it will not be possible for her to meet them for some time. time, for Ayla to realize that if matters remain in this state, the consequences will be dire. Ayla finds herself in a meeting of the preparatory committee for the party, where the other ladies were busy discussing the types of flowers that will decorate the hall, such as lilies or freesias. But Ayla's mind was in a completely different place, where she was sure that she recognized the voice of the conspiracy leader and that he must be Tilkelton. Shock takes hold of her, as she never imagined at all that he is still clinging to his ambition to ascend the imperial throne, and she thinks about the extent of the madness of the matter, that he seeks to kill his nephew for the sake of seizing the throne, and wonders how she did not realize before that he is a person as horrific as this. And while she was immersed in her thoughts, Viscountess Fontiel and Lady Silka were whispering that what is rumored about the Emperor's interest in Ayla is merely a lie, for it is known in the entire capital the extent of his intense hatred for her. While Ayla was thinking with anxiety about what she must do if she could not inform His Majesty of this truth soon, the two ladies notice her distraction, so one of them asks her with sarcasm if there is something wrong, and the other adds with mockery that she hopes she is not anxious because of her inability to reserve a dress for the party. And they continue their mockery, accusing her of fabricating clear lies to cover up her wounded pride, and point out that with the approach of the party date, they doubt her ability to reserve a dress in any salon in the capital. Then one of them presents an insulting offer to her, saying that if she bowed her head and apologized to her, she could get one of the unsold dresses for her. Or perhaps she would give her a dress she was planning to get rid of, confirming to her that it is much more luxurious than her current dress. Their sarcastic conversation is interrupted by the arrival of a servant knocking on the door, politely asking if the daughter of Duke Wildenbesten is present. The servant informs her that he has something to deliver by order of His Majesty the Emperor, and features of amazement appear on Ayla. Then he reveals an entire hall filled with luxurious dresses and carefully wrapped gift boxes, explaining that they are a gift and a letter from His Majesty. Ayla sits amidst the many gifts in a state of total bewilderment, unable to comprehend the situation. The two noblewomen look at the scene in shock and disbelief, wondering how such a thing could happen. Silka directs her question to the servant, doubting whether His Majesty sent all this to her specifically, so the servant confirms the matter's validity. The two noblewomen whisper, acknowledging that the rumors about her being the Emperor's partner were true, and they marvel at the time that His Majesty categorically insists that she read it. Ayla takes the letter with slightly trembling hands, then stands to open it and read its contents with serious features. She reads the Emperor's words in which he asks about the reason why the desire to see her takes hold of him whenever he holds a pen. So she screams to herself, wishing that he would truly come to see her, for she has a matter she wants to tell him. But he continues in his letter that he does not intend to come to see her until she comes to visit him, which arouses her resentment. So she wonders with annoyance at the reason that drives him, for this time specifically, to act according to what she says. The Emperor elaborates, reminding her that she described him as selfish, but he denies that, asserting that although she thinks she knows him well, there is much she ignores about him, including the feelings he has harbored for her for long years. He concludes his letter that even if she does not accept his feelings, there are words he desperately wants to convey to her, and for this reason, he will be waiting for her in the central garden on the morning of the opening ceremony. Ayla's eyes widen as she realizes the importance of the timing, for the morning of the opening means she will see him before the official ceremonies begin. So overwhelming happiness floods her, and she jumps for joy, for she has finally found the appropriate opportunity to inform him of the conspiracy. She regains her composure and convinces herself that what she will do is merely a duty she must perform as a citizen of the Zahard Empire. And she tries to confirm to herself that she does not harbor any personal interest in His Majesty. Time passes and the date of the opening ceremony arrives, and things go without any accidents occurring. As Ayla stands radiant in her new dress in the central garden, the Emperor appears before her in full elegance and praises her beauty, saying she looks extremely wonderful. Her heart becomes confused by his words, and she thinks that things were not this bad until this moment, and that everything would have gone well if she had only been able to tell him about the infiltrators. She looks at him with tearful eyes and begs him to listen to what she will say, but she never expected things to take this turn. Events drift back in memory to moments ago, when the Emperor was standing in the garden. Ayla arrives wearing her elegant white dress, so he turns toward her and smiles. He advances toward her and tells her that she looks extremely beautiful tonight, so her heart beats fast at his compliment. But she soon reminds herself that the time is not appropriate for this confusion. She turns around to check the place and asks him if there is anyone else nearby, so he seems surprised by her question, but he confirms to her that the place is empty. Then she tells him seriously that she came because she has something extremely important she must report to him. And since the matter is secret and no one should hear it, she asks his permission to whisper it in his ear. But as she advances toward him to whisper, her foot suddenly twists and she loses her balance, about to fall. The Emperor handles the situation quickly and catches her, saving her from falling, and comments that she is still as clumsy as she always was. So she thanks him with extreme confusion. The Emperor asks her smilingly whether she prefers whispering, so Ayla answers with extreme confusion that she agrees. But he surprises her by carrying her in his arms, telling her that they do not have much time, and asks her to tell him what she has while they walk. Then he approaches her, whispering that he will walk slowly so she can talk freely, so she feels extreme shyness from his excessive proximity. While he is carrying her and moving with her, he stops suddenly after Ayla finished the talk she wanted to tell him. She asks him if he felt panic, so the Emperor confirms that he of course felt that. And Ayla thinks about how terrible the situation is for him, and to discover that his family is trying to kill him, so he must feel indescribable horror. But the Emperor surprises her with a completely unexpected reaction, as he asks her in a sharp and angry tone whether she wishes for death to dare to eavesdrop in this way, so she freezes in her place from shock. Then he scolds her, saying that she should have escaped immediately instead of staying, wondering at her lack of feeling fear. So she screams in his face, saying that her concern is not for herself, but for him because there are assassins targeting him. The Emperor interrupts her sharply, asserting that this does not matter, and that what truly matters to him is her. So his words stun her and he tries to evade the situation, claiming that this is merely the normal state of affairs. But he suggests then that they move to a more private place. So Ayla wonders to herself if he feels shy, and she notices in amazement that his ears have turned red. The Emperor asks her to listen to him carefully and clarifies to her that there is nothing in this imperial palace that escapes his notice, so she realizes the matter. She asks him in shock if he already knew about the matter, and he answers, of course. Ayla feels stunned and tells him that she was extremely worried because she thought he knew nothing. So he looks at her seriously and orders her to listen to him, warning her that if she faces any dangerous situation from now on, she must run without looking behind her. So she agrees reluctantly. While they continue their way, she looks at him in confusion. She asks him about their destination, so he answers her with a smile that they are headed to the ballroom. Upon their arrival at the entrance, Ayla glimpses some nobles, including her father and brother, so she is struck by amazement. So she demands him in embarrassment to put her down, but he replies to her that she twisted her ankle and she must be more careful. She begs him to listen to her, so he confirms to her that he is indeed listening, but he refuses her request to put her down, joking that he fears he might not be able to do so. Among those present, her father and brother were watching the situation with interest. Ayla realizes that everyone is watching them, so she covers her face with her hands in extreme shyness. The Emperor carries her into the hall and announces her arrival. Then he lowers her gently and tells her that he is truly honored by her being his partner tonight. For Ayla realizes then the reason he carried her all the way. It was to put her in a situation where she cannot refuse him in front of everyone. He reaches out his hand and invites her to step forward, so she feels some frustration from the situation, but she admits to herself that entering the ballroom side by side with His Majesty was her dream for years. At that moment, the announcer's voice rises, declaring the entry of Emperor Robros Zahard and his partner Lady Ayla Wildenbesten into the hall. Ayla enters the hall side by side with the Emperor, while their hands are gently intertwined before everyone's eyes. At that moment, Ayla felt overwhelming happiness, as if this scene was an explicit declaration of their love to the entire world, amidst looks of fascination and amazement from those present. As soon as they reach the throne platform, they sit together, and the Emperor asks her to remain sitting beside him, while she wonders to herself in amazement whether her dream has finally come true. The Emperor leans toward her, kissing her hand gently, and whispers to her that he will leave for a moment and will return to her shortly. Ayla continues to watch his back as he moves away toward the platform, while it is announced to the attendees that His Majesty will now deliver the opening speech. While she was sitting alone listening to his words and contemplating his back, feelings of tension intermingled within her, for her to clasp her hands tightly as she waits. As soon as the Emperor finishes his speech, declaring the official opening of the grand dance, the hall rings with the sound of warm applause. The Emperor turns, returning to his place, but he is surprised that the seat where he left Ayla has become empty. His Majesty stands looking at the empty place in silence, for signs of confusion and anxiety to be drawn on his features. Meanwhile, Ayla had left the hall in search of quiet, so she ran escaping to a secluded place to be alone with herself. But as soon as she arrives, she is surprised by the presence of a stranger standing with his back to her, sighing deeply. So she wonders with annoyance about the identity of this man who is present in a place she thought she was the only one who knew. Ayla peeks at him, for his mumblings to reach her ears as he expresses his longing to see a girl named Randall Beatrice. Ayla is struck by extreme shock and her eyes widen in bewilderment upon hearing her friend's name. This young man was Daniel Amida, belonging to the family of Duke Amida, and one of the Knights of the South, who harbors in his heart an old unrequited love for his childhood friend, Randall. Ayla decides to come out of her hiding place and greets him with a smile, so he jumps from his place in terror from her sudden appearance. Daniel puts his hand on his chest in fear and asks her confusedly about her identity, so she introduces herself quietly, saying she is Ayla from the Wildenbesten family. Ayla smiles kindly and tells him that people do not usually pass through this place, and offers to help guide him to the path if he is lost. And to herself, she was thinking of the necessity of pretending to be kind in front of him since he seemed to her a suspicious person. Daniel regains his composure a little and asks her about the reason for her presence as well in a place like this. So Ayla answers him with a light stammer at first. Then she explains to him with a quiet smile that she entered the party accompanied by His Majesty the Emperor, which brought upon her the anger and resentment of the other ladies. She adds with sad features that thinking about being bullied again gives her a headache, and that she hid here out of her feeling of guilt and her fear of involving her friends in her problems. Daniel looks at her with pity and realizes in himself that she is a victim of bullying. Ayla continues her speech, expressing her regret because her two friends, Rini and Randall, are likely looking for her now, and that she feels shame to a degree that prevents her from facing them, for Daniel to pay attention immediately upon hearing the name Randall. Ayla suggests that the presence of a noble man beside her might help her avoid those embarrassing situations, and offers to help him in turn in finding the person he is looking for. Daniel looks at her with interest and asks her directly if she knows Randall. They begin walking together, and Daniel confesses to her that he was lost and frustrated because it was his first time in the palace, expressing his gratitude for her help and wondering at Randall possessing a kind friend like her. So Ayla responds with humility that the matter is not worth thanking. Daniel claims that he has begun to understand the layout of the palace and points to a wrong direction, thinking it is the way to the ballroom. But Ayla corrects him smilingly and points to the opposite direction. Daniel laughs with embarrassment at his mistake, and they continue their walking together in silence through the palace corridors. Then Daniel breaks the silence, wondering about the place where Randall might be present now. Ayla points out that Randall is certainly excited for it being her first party in the palace, and suggests to him that they go to look for her in the crowded and lively places. In another place inside the palace, Randall and Rini were wandering together, where one of them wonders about the place where Ayla disappeared, and the other suggests looking for her in the secluded and quiet places due to her complete confidence in finding her. There, the Emperor is present in the party hall, surrounded by the nobles who welcome him warmly after a long absence. Despite this welcome, he seemed distracted, as he started searching with his looks in every direction for Ayla, wishing if he could see her for a longer period, and wondering to himself about the place of her disappearance. His face brightens and a smile shines on his face when his eyes finally fall on her from afar. But his joy did not last long, as his features soon change to shock and gloom when he notices that she stands and talks in complete harmony with another man other than him. Meanwhile, Ayla was telling Daniel that her friend does not seem present nearby, suggesting to him that they go out to search for her outside, for him to agree with her on the idea. Given the extreme crowding in the place, Daniel offers to accompany her, extending his arm for her to lean on for her safety. Ayla accepts his help with a kind smile and expresses her thanks to him. The Emperor watches this entire scene from afar, so he turns with features covered in anger and coldness, announcing to the nobles surrounding him his desire to leave immediately. On the other side of the palace, Randall and Rini were wandering and one of them felt hungry, so they suggest heading to the garden first to eat the food prepared there. While Ayla and Daniel were walking together in the garden, they were exchanging conversations amidst the whispers of those present, as she was telling him a funny situation about Randall when she was stung by a bee and her cheek swelled severely. Yet she did not pay attention to that, and contented herself with asking about what they were eating, which arouses Daniel's amazement. Ayla follows laughing how Randall pulled her hair forcefully back then, so Daniel smiles at her talk, while the two noblewomen who bullied Ayla previously were watching them closely. The two noblewomen begin making malicious comments, accusing Ayla of trying to seduce another man because they believed she had been rejected again by the Emperor. And they persist in their mockery by assuming that the Emperor allowed her to enter with him only on condition that she does not approach him throughout her life. So Daniel notices those cruel whispers and realizes that they are continuing to annoy her. Daniel's features darken with resentment from this situation, thinking bitterly about the cruelty of the bullying methods practiced by high society. The two noblewomen approach them with fake smiles, and Fontil claims she did not know of Ayla's presence nearby. And in a deliberate and malicious move, the noblewoman pretends that her hand slipped to pour the glass of wine she is carrying directly onto Daniel's chest. Daniel handles the situation quickly, warning Ayla so she stays away and is not hurt. Fontiel feigns extreme regret, claiming that the matter was just an unintended accident, while Ayla panics and rushes to check on Daniel's condition with great concern. Daniel glares at the noblewomen with a sharp and scary look, pointing in a tone that carries a veiled threat to the fact that etiquette in the palace seems to have declined severely from what it was in the past. And he strictly denounces whether the current era allows insulting a lady belonging to an ancient ducal family in this crude way, which arouses the noblewomen's confusion and their extreme tension. The two noblewomen are forced to withdraw quickly and offer a shaky apology, wishing them a pleasant time before fleeing from before them. Ayla turns to Daniel, blaming him for exposing his clothes to wetness for the sake of protecting her. So he answers her nobly that protecting ladies is at the core of his duties as a knight. Ayla reaches her hand toward the stain on his jacket, expressing her deep regret and sorrow because she did not intervene to prevent that from happening from the beginning. Ayla looks at him with eyes full of fears and a feeling of guilt, while he seems slightly confused by her closeness and interest. Daniel holds her hands gently to stop her, clarifying with a slight smile that he will handle cleaning the matter himself to spare her embarrassment. At that moment when their hands touched, the Emperor suddenly appears while watching them. The Emperor's eyes fall on the scene of their hands intertwining, and Ayla's surprise, so his eyes shine with a dark and scary energy reflecting overwhelming anger and fatal jealousy. Meanwhile, Randall and Rinny happen to pass nearby, where Randall accidentally bumps into Rinny, and Rinny is surprised by the Emperor's presence. Randall notices Daniel's presence accompanied by Ayla, so she expresses with a smile her amazement at their getting to know each other already, unaware that the Emperor stands behind them like a gloomy shadow portending danger. Both Daniel and Ayla jump from the surprise upon hearing Randall's call to be struck by a bigger shock when they realize the presence of His Majesty, the angry Emperor standing before them just now. Randall directs her speech to Daniel, expressing her amazement at seeing him in Ayla's company after she was wondering where he was. So Daniel initiates by clarifying the situation, pointing out that he had been lost in the palace and that Ayla had been kind enough to help him find his way. Emperor Robros interrupts their talk with a cold tone, drawing Daniel's attention to his wet clothes and suggests in a commanding tone that someone guide him to the waiting room. Ayla tries to intervene to soften the situation, offering that she accompany him, but the Emperor stops her with a sharp look, announcing that he is the one who will speak with Lady Ayla in private, thereby imposing his authority and removing Daniel from the scene. At that moment, Rinny steps forward wisely and takes the initiative, as she offers Lord Daniel that she guide him to the way to the waiting room, so he thanks her and proceeds in her company. After Daniel leaves in the company of Rinny and Randall, Ayla remains alone in the face of the scowling Emperor. Ayla asks him hesitantly whether he has a matter he wants to say, for him to surprise her with a direct and sharp question about the nature of the relationship that brings her together with that man. Surprise hits her from his question, so she mumbles in confusion, for the Emperor to press her again in a tone filled with jealousy, asking her to clarify to him the type of relationship that binds her to Daniel Amita specifically. Ayla recalls in her mind the details of her conversation with Daniel, where he was telling her a funny story about their friend Randall, and how this conversation revealed to her his deep feelings that he harbors for Randall since that incident. And she remembers how he begged her to keep his secret for fear of the spread of rumors that might harm Randall's reputation, and she had promised him that immediately, which made him express his extreme gratitude for the presence of a kind friend like her in Randall's life. While she was thinking about the purity of Daniel's feelings toward her friend, a gentle smile is drawn on her face. And it is the same smile that made the Emperor wonder to himself if he had seen its like recently. But he suddenly stops her from completing her speech, saying bitterly that there is no need for explanation, and he adds, admitting that he does not have the right in principle to pose such a question. Ayla is surprised by the change of his position and asks him about the meaning of his talk, so he clarifies to her with pain that even at this moment he does not have the right to keep her beside him or stand in the way of her happiness, and that he will not cause her more troubles. Then he turns, moving away from her after he wished her happiness, leaving her standing in her place. Ayla looks in his wake while she feels that there is a misunderstanding that has occurred, and she tries to call him, but she retreats, wondering what she should say, and she finally convinces herself that there is no reason that calls her to clarify a misunderstanding she did not cause. Since that day, things began to take a strange turn, for while Ayla was talking with her two friends about the ongoing party and how she gained some weight, announcing that it is impossible to stop eating delicacies, she stopped suddenly when she glimpsed His Majesty the Emperor, who looked in their direction for a moment then turned, leaving without greeting. This behavior left Ayla in confusion as she wonders about the reason for his deliberate ignoring of her. And the situation was repeated the next day in the library, while she was discussing with her two friends about an upcoming tea party, and jokingly denying that she decided to stop eating sweets. The Emperor passed beside her on the stairs, ignoring her presence completely, for Ayla to be sure then that he had begun to avoid her again. Ayla remains standing while she is confused and wrestling with her thoughts, so she remembers that she had rejected him clearly, and tries to convince herself that she no longer cares about him at all. But despite this decision, memories of their meetings together and the situations that brought them together recur to her mind, for her to find herself wondering in the end about the reason for her continuing to think about him. And she wonders with annoyance to herself that if he was going to leave and turn his back this easily, why did he perform actions from the beginning that might mislead her and give her false hope? And in the midst of her distraction, her friend interrupted her by asking her what she just said. Ayla handles the situation and tells her that it is nothing, then urges her to move forward quickly. While they were walking together, Ayla reaches a conviction whose essence is that His Majesty's feelings were not of that strength she thought in the end, and she describes herself as a fool for drifting behind excitement and hope alone once again. Later, while they were sitting together, Randall mentions what she heard about Count Ralph Linderman from the north, who seems to be pursuing Lady Silka lately, for Rini to confirm the matter's validity, pointing out that they were seen together often, which arouses Ayla's amazement. Randall wonders about Rini's lack of amazement at the possibility of the cunning vixen Silka falling in love. So Rini answers her that Silka, although she is not kind to them, was always very popular among men. For Ayla to sigh with boredom while she thinks that even Silka falls in love. While silence was prevailing over their session, Ayla released a deep sigh full of heartbreak. Rini comments on the situation, explaining that this does not mean that they can face anyone, in reference to her high standards in choosing a partner. While Randall confesses sadly that she does not have anyone to date originally because of her introverted nature. And Ayla adds with a sarcastic smile that there is no one who might want to date her anyway, after she pursued one man and was described as a stalker, which harmed her reputation significantly. Thus, they conclude with a result whose essence is that each of them, due to her own circumstances, was not able to pursue love. Suddenly, Ayla interrupts this gloomy atmosphere and stands, announcing that she is hungry. And soon one of the servants approaches them, praising the wonderful desserts served in the garden, and recommends in particular the apple pie. So Ayla thanks him kindly. Then Ayla turns to her two friends with excitement, and suggests to them going immediately because she wants to be happy at once. So Rini agrees with her opinion. In the garden, while they were enjoying their time, Ayla expresses how happy she is, describing the pie as the tastiest in her life, but she soon becomes annoyed by the strong sunlight that prevents her from opening her eyes, despite the beautiful weather. While her two friends confirm that they are fine, an unidentified lady came forward and gave Ayla her umbrella, asking her to take it because she was on her way to return inside. Ayla thanks her gratefully, so the lady answers her that the matter is not worth thanking. Ayla wonders to herself about the identity of that kind lady. Then she opens the umbrella, enjoys the shade it provided her, and feels comfortable. Suddenly, her quiet is interrupted by the sound of a scream asking for help, so she stops in confusion, to glimpse from afar a man dragging a woman by force while she is begging him to stop. Ayla realizes that the woman is Lady Silka, who was screaming asking for help, so Ayla freezes in her place while she does not know what to do. Confusion and anxiety take hold of her, and she wonders what she must do in this difficult situation. The man approaches Silka and pins her to the tree, and scolds her angrily, saying that he asked her to stop. Then he asks her sharply if it is truly difficult to bring one document, asserting that everything he does is for their sake. Silka responds to him with intense anger, wondering if he thinks her stupid, and clarifying that bringing that document means losing her father's private army loan contract, which is equivalent to stealing 500 soldiers. Silka screams in Count Ralph's face, refusing for him to group her with him in his talk, and asserting that he is the one who pursued her of his own free will. A cunning smile appears on the man's face, and he comments that he would have liked to settle the matter peacefully, but he soon reveals his true intentions, as he grabs strands of her hair forcefully and pulls her toward him, wondering if she is still unaware of the situation's gravity. Then he threatens her with destroying her reputation, hinting that he might spread a rumor whose essence is that the daughter of the Silka family indulges in a dissolute nightlife with men without caring for anyone. And he continues his threat that, according to the situation, he is capable of making this rumor seem real, and asks her rudely if she would like to try it now. While she is begging him terrified, suddenly a hand appears, striking the attacker with the umbrella on his head, for this hand to be Ayla's hand, who orders him boldly to move his dirty hand away from her. While Silka was shedding tears, the man is surprised by this intervention, for Ayla to appear standing bravely before Silka, using her umbrella as a weapon for self-defense, for the man to ask her in shock about her identity. Soon he recognizes her and asks her if she is the daughter of Duke Wildenbesten. So Ayla is surprised by his knowledge of her and asks him how he knew that. So he answers her with a malicious smile, claiming that he is close to the Duke, then tries to dismiss her rudely. asking her to leave because he will overlook the matter this time. Ayla wonders for a moment whether he truly knows her father, but she answers firmly that his knowledge of her father does not matter to her. And she asserts that using violence against a weaker person is something absolutely unacceptable, so he mocks her talk and challenges for them to test together whether the matter is acceptable or not. In a decisive moment, Emperor Robros appears suddenly, surprising the man with a powerful punch that knocks him to the ground. And the emperor looks at him with intense anger, wondering how he dares to cause a riot inside the imperial palace. While the man was trembling with fear, the emperor vows to him that he will not die a peaceful death. Then he orders his guards to lead him away. The umbrella falls from Ayla's hand, so the emperor advances from her and calls her by her name. Then he scolds her with anger and anxiety, reminding her that he had warned her before and asked her to run away immediately in dangerous situations. And he asks her about the reason that prevented her from doing that, so Ayla is touched by his clear concern. He tells her in a trembling voice that he was extremely worried that she would be hurt. But Ayla rushes toward him in a moment of weakness and hugs him tightly, confessing the extent of her fear. The emperor is surprised at first, but he soon pulls her to him kindly. The emperor noticed that Silka's heart is beating fast, as Silka was sitting on the ground trembling in a state of horror. Ayla approaches Silka and tells her that what happened was shocking, while the emperor orders his guards to transfer Lady Silka to the infirmary immediately. And he directs his speech to the guards, asserting that there must not be any blind spots in the imperial palace. And he orders them to review the current security situation and submit an urgent report. Then he watches them as they accompany Ayla and Silka inside, and he remains standing in his place with serious features. Later, Ayla visits Silka in the infirmary, so Silka asks her about the reason for her saving her, expressing the lack of any justification that drives her to go to this extent for her sake. So Ayla stands beside her quietly and answers her, wondering whether one needs a reason to help another person. Silka gets up from her bed suddenly and agrees with Ayla's talk. Then she asks her frankly whether she knows that she hates her. For Ayla to answer her bitterly, how can she not notice after all the accusations she directed at her? Silka clarifies that her hatred was not directed at Ayla personally, but at her parents, and that the matter began since she was young. And she reveals that her parents were always warning her against girls of her age who belonged to a social class higher than her, and how they were planting in her fear and caution, and asserting to her that Ayla surpasses her in status, and ordering her not to dare to lose before her. And she remembers how Ayla approached her in their childhood and invited her to ride horses together. But she, driven by her jealousy and envy of Ayla's freedom, answered her rudely, describing horse riding as a cliché matter that does not befit a noble lady. Although she felt deep disappointment in herself after this situation, her parents praised her and encouraged her to continue treating her harshly, which is what she did, as she continued harming Ayla despite her knowledge that that was a mistake. And she confesses that when she realized her mistake, it was too late, and she did not possess the courage to apologize. Silka apologizes sincerely for everything she did and wishes she could go back in time to take a different choice. Ayla agrees with her opinion, clarifying that it might be too late to fix things and that they unfortunately cannot go back in time. But she adds with an optimistic smile that the time remaining for them to live has not passed yet and that it is still before them. And she asserts that there is still plenty of time and that they can start from now. Silka is touched by her words and sheds tears, wondering if she truly means that. So Ayla reaches her hand to her with a warm smile and confirms to her that she of course intends that, and suggests to her that they start a new page from today. Silka holds her hand while crying and expresses her deep thanks, then embraces her tightly. Ayla smiles while embracing her, in a moment of reconciliation and forgiveness. Meanwhile, Lady Fontiel arrives and calls Silka to check on her. The lady is surprised by their presence together, so she asks her what is happening. For Ayla to answer her with a smile, asking her to pretend that she did not see anything. Silka thanks Ayla for her coming, and while she was preparing to leave, Silka asks her to stay for a longer period. Ayla consoles her, asking her not to cry more so her body can rest, and promises her that she will return to visit her, for Ayla to confirm to her the sincerity of her promise. After Ayla leaves, angry features appear on Lady Fontiel's face, and immediately upon Ayla's return to her room, her friends surprise her with great anxiety, where they ask her what happened and where she was, and her brother insists that she lie in bed immediately. Ayla tries to reassure them that she is fine, but Randall scolds her with anxiety, clarifying that she called her name 3 times by herself today, and orders her to rest, so they help her to lie in bed to get a share of rest. While she is lying down, her brother tells her that he heard she did something reckless in the garden to save Silka, for Randall to comment sarcastically on her saving that vixen, and Daniel confirms His Majesty the Emperor's appearance on the scene. Ayla reassures them with a smile, asserting that she has reconciled with Silka, and that she was going through difficult circumstances, and asks them to give her a new chance because she promised to be better. Rini continues her interrogation, wondering what happened with His Majesty the Emperor, and whether the rumors swirling about their hug in the garden are true. Shyness floods Ayla and she buries her face in her cover. So her friends become sure of the rumor's validity and wonder curiously whether they had indeed hugged. Elvin, Ayla's brother, remains silent while watching the situation, then calls her by her name quietly. And he tells her seriously that there is a matter he needs to inform her of. So Ayla asks him with curiosity whether there is something she must know, and about the nature of this matter. Hesitation appears on Elvin, but he talks with another lady, who is the elder sister of Ayla and Elvin, who sighs wondering about her sister. The sister suggests to Ayla that the time has come to reassess their father's political strategy, so Ayla is surprised by this sudden proposition. The sister asks Ayla about the place of their current presence, which is the Imperial Palace, and about the type of events to which they are invited most often. So Ayla answers that they are imperial occasions. Then the sister follows her question about the people they communicate with constantly, for Ayla to answer that they are the elder emperor Johann and here, amazement appears on the faces of Rini and Randall, who are listening to the dialogue. The sister clarifies that she did not ask her an obvious matter because she thinks her stupid, but to make her realize what she was neglecting all the time. Ayla realizes what her sister is hinting at, and concludes that she is trying to say that their father stands in the rank of the imperial family. But she wonders about the relationship of that to her father's way of dealing with politics, pointing out that it is normal for nobles to maintain their relationships with the palace. The sister poses a final question and asks her to remember how she used to act whenever rumors spread. So Ayla sinks into complete confusion, unable to understand the significance of this question. The sister smiles and tells her from behind the door that she has given her enough hints already. After her leaving, Ayla reaches a conclusion whose essence is that her sister plays on both sides to see who will win in the end, and wonders if she is just a neutral person waiting for the result. But her sister surprises everyone by opening the door again and orders Rini and Randall to leave because she wants to talk with Ayla in private. In a desperate attempt to avoid this talk, Ayla pretends that she understood her intention and says that she is talking about maintaining a wise and peaceful position and not overlooking wrong actions when a conflict breaks out. The sister looks at her two stunned friends and closes the door behind her. Ayla breathes a sigh of relief, while Randall comments that the atmosphere was extremely tense and wonders if this was just her feeling. So Ayla confirms to her that the matter was not like that, and Rini wonders about the reason for her messing in a situation like this. So Ayla answers that she is sick and resting, and thought she would get indulgence for once. Then they ask her about the nature of the personality of Lady Bianca who was with her, so Ayla answers that there is not much to say. Ayla remembers how her sister used to ask her always about her actions when she quarrels with someone, like her quarrel with her brother that ended with her declaring the end of their relationship officially, and how her sister used to visit her in her room after that to check on her. And she remembers how her sister used to justify Elvin's angry behavior, that he was afraid of her hurting herself, and that his shouting was stemming from his shock. And she confirms to her that Elvin is bad at expressing kindly, and that Ayla is much better than him in that, and that she is the mature one between them. And she was suggesting to her that she tolerate him until he learns how to use his kind voice, and reminds her that he cried much because of her. Thus, her brother was always retreating, convinced that his sister deserves that because she did not listen to his warnings. But Ayla could not believe that he indeed cried. Ayla's sister confirms that Elvin certainly was worried about her, and adds with a smile that she is sure that Ayla has felt this worry too, pointing out that any person will be shocked if his favorite sibling starts shouting in his face suddenly. Elvin wonders in amazement and joy whether Ayla truly described him as the favorite sibling, so his sister confirms that to him smilingly and surprised by his lack of knowledge of the matter. His sister apologizes jokingly because she revealed a secret, and asks Elvin not to tell Ayla what she said so she does not feel embarrassed. So Elvin agrees while smiling shyly. Ayla remembers how her elder sister always intervened at the right time to prevent matters from becoming complicated, and confesses that she felt some betrayal when she discovered that later. But she acknowledges sincerely that her sister's ability to handle situations was impressive, and wishes if she could learn from her this cunning, pointing out that her sister always appears neutral on the surface. But in her depths, she knows exactly what is right and how to direct matters skillfully in favor of her family. Ayla recalls a scene from the past when members of her family were talking with some members of the imperial family, and how they were always confirming that there is no link binding them to the opposing Tillen family. And she remembers how her father was talking in harmony with one of the high-ranking nobles in the palace while she was watching the situation from afar. And she thinks about how her father never showed publicly that he stands in the rank of the imperial palace. Ayla puts her hand on her mouth in shock, while she suddenly realizes the truth of Emperor Robros's intentions. So she wonders to herself if his attempts to win her favor, and perhaps proposing to her, were nothing but an attempt by him to control her family. And she concludes that he must believe that her father is not on his side yet, and that by asking for her hand, he will be able to seize power. Her eyes ignite with anger while looking at her two friends, and Randall realizes that the Emperor is impossible not to know that truth. But Rini silences her and says she must return home immediately. Rini says goodbye to Ayla and tells her she will leave with Randall, and leaves her to take a share of rest. Later, she determines to tell His Majesty the truth, and she thinks that she must tell him that her father supports him already, even if he does not marry her, and that this marriage is not necessary. But she stops suddenly and wonders about the reason for her hesitation. Ayla sits desperately in her room and thinks that it would be better if she told him that, for this will solve the misunderstanding between them, wondering what afflicted her and why she cannot even hate him as she should, but rather why she feels this hesitation. Ayla goes out for an evening stroll in the garden, trying to clear her mind. Suddenly, the Emperor appears behind her, except that she is surprised by seeing him and asks him about the reason for his coming out at this late time. He answers her that he came out to inhale some air, and informs her that he has decided to take over the matter of interrogating the person who threatened her and Lady Silka himself. And he confirms to her in a firm tone that he intends to uncover every crime that person committed, and that he will punish him severely. For Ayla to be surprised by his talk, and she asks him in amazement if he came all this distance only to tell her that. The Emperor smiles with affection and confesses to her that he was worried about her in reality, and therefore he came to see her and check on her. Ayla smiles and confirms to him that she is completely fine. The Emperor offers to accompany her in her stroll, justifying that by him not wanting her to be exposed to any other danger, and he asks her if she minds him accompanying her, so Ayla answers him that she does not mind. They walk together in silence through the forest, and the Emperor comments on the beauty of the fresh breeze. So Ayla agrees with his opinion, but in her heart she was wrestling with a feeling of guilt and wondering if she must inform him of the truth now, for fear of the feeling of guilt crushing her if she continued to pretend lack of knowledge. The Emperor notices her distraction and silence, so he turns to her with worry and wonders to himself if his presence beside her annoys her or makes her feel uncomfortable. The Emperor smiles, thinking to himself that he cannot blame Ayla for thinking that way. Then he calls Ayla by her name. She flinches and responds nervously, wondering what he wants. So His Majesty reassures her, asking her not to worry about what happened earlier when he embraced her, justifying it by saying that anyone feeling afraid would have reacted just like she did. The Emperor smiles gently, confessing to her that he was so happy to be able to protect her, and by her feeling safe in his arms, to the point that he felt an overwhelming desire never to let her go. Ayla feels embarrassed and confused by his words, sincerely admitting that she feels like a fool every time, fearing that she might start misunderstanding his intentions and forming wrong ideas. Then, with a forced smile, she suggests that it is better for both of them to stop acting this way. The Emperor's features turn serious, and he asks her, inquiring what she means by those words. Ayla stops walking and looks at him, telling him that there is something important she must inform him about. Before she can finish her sentence, a sudden rustling sound cuts through the moment as a flying dagger speeds toward them, which the Emperor notices immediately. The dagger sinks forcefully into the trunk of a nearby tree, coinciding with the appearance of 3 masked assassins emerging from the forest shadows. The Emperor intervenes with incredible speed, standing in front of Ayla to protect her with his body, while his eyes glow red, firmly commanding her not to dare move away from his side. The Emperor stands as an impenetrable shield before Ayla against the 3 assassins, while she is seized by profound shock, wondering in her mind what on earth is happening. The Emperor orders her to stay back, then pushes her behind him, causing Ayla to let out a cry of terror. The Emperor releases a powerful wave of dark black magic from his hand toward the assassins. The immense magical force strikes the masked men and knocks them down. The Emperor stands victorious after eliminating the threat, panting slightly, then rushes toward Ayla anxiously to check on her condition, asking if she is all right. Ayla looks at him in utter amazement, muttering his name and asking what just happened. The Emperor apologizes to Ayla for frightening her, explaining that he was born with a special magical power, and since this matter is kept as a state secret, only a very few know about it, adding that his red eye color is the clearest evidence of that power. Ayla suddenly notices something on his arm and gasps in shock, pointing out that he is injured and bleeding heavily. Ayla approaches him quickly and tears a strip of fabric from her dress, telling him that she will give him first aid, pleading with him not to move. The Emperor looks calmly at his wound, trying to downplay the injury by claiming it is negligible, but Ayla becomes very angry, tears glistening in her eyes, and she shouts at him, refusing his dismissal of the matter. emphasizing that the wound is bleeding profusely and is not simple at all. Ayla bends down with focus to tie the cloth strip tightly around the wound to stop the bleeding, while the Emperor looks at her with a gaze full of tenderness and affection. Ayla finishes tying the strip and warns him that this is just first aid, stressing the necessity of him receiving proper medical treatment later. Ayla reflects on what happened, commenting that His Majesty had hidden such an amazing power all this time. Then she raises her eyes to him and smiles sincerely, asserting that thanks to that power, they were able to survive, as he returns her looks of admiration and gratitude. Ayla gazes at his face under the moonlight, and their eyes meet in a quiet, deep moment. Ayla retreats slightly with shyness, telling him that it has been a very long time since she saw his eyes glow red, noting that she believes the last time was when they were 4 years old. The Emperor smiles softly and calls her name, then asks her in a pleading tone if she is ready to give him another chance. Ayla lowers her gaze and makes a decisive resolution, answering him that before she talks about that, there is an important matter she must tell him. Ayla raises her head and looks directly into his eyes, revealing the truth she had realized earlier, clearly affirming to him that her father stands on the side of the imperial family and truly supports them. Ayla confirms that her father's supportive stance toward the imperial family has never changed. In fact, it might have been so even before His Majesty was born. The Emperor seems surprised for a moment before nodding his head, acknowledging the truth of her words. The Emperor expresses his deep gratitude, admitting that he may be late in saying this, and assures her of his constant thanks for the Duke's continuous support of the royal family. But he quickly changes the course of the conversation, wondering about the reason that prompted her to open this topic suddenly, and curiously inquires about the fate of his confession of feelings for her. Ayla's eyes widen in clear shock and confusion, wondering in amazement if he had prior knowledge of her father's stance. The Emperor holds his head, answering her confidently that of course he knew, mockingly wondering if he seemed like a foolish emperor who couldn't even distinguish between his allies and his enemies. Ayla's confusion increases, and she asks in a trembling voice why he proposed to her despite being fully aware of everything. Thoughts cross her mind, wondering if he truly harbored genuine feelings for her, but she quickly dismisses this idea entirely within herself. She continues to analyze the situation, thinking that his engagement to her might have just been a means to publicly secure his position within the imperial family, or perhaps for another hidden reason, before scolding herself for these thoughts. The Emperor notices her distraction, approaches her, and grabs her hands sharply, denouncing the misunderstanding she fell into, asking her angrily if she really thought he proposed to her only out of greed for the Duke family's influence, to which Ayla responds by asking if that wasn't the real reason. Signs of pain and disappointment appear on his features, and he asks her seriously if she sees him as a man without a conscience to the point of proposing to a woman he doesn't love just to gain trivial power. He continues his reproach, marveling at how, after all those years she held feelings for him, she is still ignorant of the reality of his character. So Ayla replies coldly that she indeed does not know what kind of man he is. Ayla continues speaking in a sad tone, explaining that he never told her about himself, not even once during all those years. While he seems pained by her words, she reminds him that even when she used to initiate greetings, talk to him, and send him letters and gifts, she received no response at all. Ayla sheds tears and confesses that the only thing she could understand from his constant silence and disregard was that he hated her. The Emperor is shocked by her words and strongly denies it, assuring her that he never hated her a day in his life. Ayla looks at him in confusion, her tears still falling, questioning the meaning of his words and his past actions. The Emperor recalls her words she said to him earlier about the novel, when she told him that the story cannot be understood just by hearing its introduction, and that the curtain has just risen. The Emperor repeats her saying that readers cannot judge the work until it is complete, adding that their play has just begun, and how events develop from this moment depends on him. The Emperor lowers his gaze seriously, candidly telling her that even if he explained everything to her now, he does not expect her to understand his position without conditions or restrictions. He begs her to listen to him and his story until the end. The Emperor begins narrating his dark past, explaining how his father, the former emperor, ascended the throne after mercilessly liquidating all his brothers, except for his younger brother, Teal. He adds that as if wanting to atone for his horrific sins, his father surrounded his uncle Teal with immense love and attention and treated him with great kindness. The Emperor continues, pointing out that after his father named him as the crown prince and the future emperor, Teal's love turned into resentment, and he began directing all his anger and hatred toward him. He explains that this revenge started at first with small and simple things, such as sabotaging his tools and personal belongings. But the matter soon escalated, with Teal destroying and killing everything and every being he cherished or loved. The memories continue to show how Teal used to watch them maliciously when they were children playing together in the garden. The Emperor remembers how Teal approached him with a diabolical smile, hinting that he had noticed how attached and serious he was toward that little girl. The Emperor admits bitterly that since that fateful day, he made a decision to hide everything and everyone for whom he held feelings of love, fearing they would be harmed because of him. He recalls his ascension to the throne, explaining that he mistakenly believed that taking power and being crowned emperor would be a sufficient solution to end this threat and protect those he loved. The Emperor reveals that he was wrong in his estimations, and that he never realized that his decision to distance himself from her would make him miss the last chance to win her heart. Memories take him back to that day when he stood among the corpses of the assassins, realizing that that decision was a grave mistake. Ayla, in turn, recalls memories of that day, remembering that she had indeed smelled the scent of blood. But she was so drowned in her tears that she thought the metallic taste she felt was just a trace of her bitter crying. She describes herself now as a fool for not realizing the truth at that time. The Emperor seems moved by her words, surprised by her realization of the matter. Ayla breaks down crying and reproaches him, questioning why he didn't tell her the truth earlier, after he rejected her, hurt her, and made her a laughingstock before everyone. She screams in pain, asserting that if she had known the sincerity of his intentions, she would have done anything for him and waited for him forever. The Emperor looks at her with deep regret and apologizes to her. He explains to her that he thought distancing her was the best way to protect her, but she continues to cry, wondering if he has any idea of the extent of the suffering she lived through alone during all that time. The Emperor approaches her and gently holds her face, promising her that he will not leave her alone anymore, and that he will tell her and show her everything. Then he surprises her by asking if she would give him another chance before she starts dating Daniel, so she is shocked by his question. He pressures her, wondering if it is already too late, or if she holds such strong feelings for Daniel. Ayla bristles with anger at his assumption, shouting in his face, explaining that if she loved Daniel, she wouldn't be strolling with him, the Emperor, alone now. The Emperor's face lights up and hope is written on it, so he asks her if this means she still loves him. Ayla turns her face evasively and answers him that it is uncertain. Then she adds that if he really wants to date her, he must make an effort to prove it. The Emperor smiles enthusiastically and promises her that he will do his best. As they continue their walk, he offers to carry her on his back because the place is dark and dangerous and because he is injured, but she refuses, so he insists that she stay by his side, reminding her that she saw him herself eliminating the attackers. During that time, his uncle Teal was remembering what he saw among the bushes back then, as he had seen everything clearly. He began to remember what he saw when he was threatening one of his men with a fate more horrific than a cell if he did not comply with his orders. Although his man had ignored the sound of nearby movement made by Ayla, Teal felt someone's presence. Teal remembers the girl's name, Ayla Wildenpiston. Memories take him back to their childhood when he often saw them playing together. He remembers how she used to call her brother, and thinks to himself that he cannot allow her to be harmed. But his malicious smile reveals his dark intentions, as he sees that since they have known each other for a long time, he must treat her with a special affection. In the present, one of Teal's men bursts into the room to inform him of an emergency, that all the assassins have been killed. He confirms to him that Emperor Rubros and Lady Ayla are perfectly safe. Teal bristles with anger, scolding his man because he had issued clear instructions to target the Emperor when he was alone. One of Teal's men informs his master that the Emperor and Ayla were strolling together at that exact time, while Teal thinks to himself with contempt how the Emperor, despite his excessive self-confidence, still continues to fail, considering that he possesses no real power, but just empty vanity. Then he expresses his extreme dissatisfaction with the incompetence that makes him nauseous, so the man apologizes to him for the failure of the mission, blaming some unforeseen factors, to which Teal replies with veiled sarcasm that he is sure of that. Teal continues his interrogation with a smile that carries a threat within it, wondering if this failure was intentional, so the man hurries to deny that categorically. Then Teal reminds him of the fate of those talentless people who tried to get close to him in the past, so the man bows, confirming that he remembers that well. But Teal suddenly changes his manner, laughing and placing his hand on the man's shoulder, telling him that he was only joking and asking him not to be nervous, so the man seems confused by this shift. However, Teal hides his true intentions behind this joke, thinking to himself with a cunning smile that there is no need for anger, for in the end, everything will come to him eventually. Then he asks his man confidently if he isn't right, and the other agrees immediately. Teal issues a clear order, emphasizing the necessity of ensuring Ayla is not subjected to any harm, justifying it by saying that there is no benefit in antagonizing Duke Wildenpiston, so the man confirms to him his understanding of the matter. In the meantime, elsewhere, one of the Emperor's assistants was expressing extreme concern, warning His Majesty that his continued removal of the bandage from his wound would make matters worse. But the Emperor, examining his wrapped arm, comments coldly that there is very little blood, and wonders if they could make more of it appear. Then he reveals his plan to his shocked assistant, explaining that he wants the wound to be severe enough to make her rush to him worried the moment she sees him. He even jokingly suggests breaking his arm instead, because it would look truly painful, driving his assistant into a state of panic, as he begs him not to do that, because his own head would be the one to pay the price. While Ayla was sitting in her room, she suddenly heard the creaking of the door. She was surprised by the appearance of His Majesty the Emperor, so she called out to him. Ayla rushes toward him anxiously and asks him if he is all right. He pretends to be weak, claiming that the bandage came loose and that he suffered a bad fall that led to a head injury. Ayla helps him inside while inviting him to rest, as he moans in pain. After he sits down, she begins retying the bandage around his arm, wondering in confusion how a bandage could come loose so easily. The Emperor watches her with a tender look, thinking to himself how cute she looks at that moment. The Emperor thanks her for being there, claiming he was on the verge of collapsing, so Ayla tells him that she is truly worried and asks him not to say such things. Then he tries to reassure her jokingly that he is the type whose bones heal quickly if they break, so she asks him anxiously if he had just suffered a fracture, so he backtracks, explaining that happened in the past. But his words spark panic in Ayla, as she shouts, questioning how he dares to mention such a serious matter only now. The Emperor is pleased by her concern and interprets her interest as definitive proof of her love for him, continuing his act by claiming that his heart is pounding, and his limbs feel numb from the intensity of love. In fact, his body trembles from tension, but Ayla takes his words seriously, interpreting them as serious medical symptoms, thinking he is suffering from heart disease and numbness in the limbs. She suddenly rose, announcing that she would call the doctor immediately. The Emperor is surprised by her reaction and calls out to her, trying to stop her, and explaining that she has misunderstood. In his attempt to prevent her from leaving, she loses her balance and falls, but he quickly handles the situation and catches her, finding himself embracing her in his arms on the floor. Ayla looks at him in surprise and asks him in a tone carrying suspicion if he had said he was truly injured. Ayla comments sarcastically that his bones seem perfectly strong and solid, so the Emperor answers her, trying to manage the situation, that he had already told her he recovers quickly. He adds that his recovery seems particularly fast on that day, and that all of that is thanks to her presence by his side, offering her his thanks. Ayla discovers the trick and confronts him angrily, questioning whether his claim of falling in pain was just a lie and an excuse to get close to her. She expresses to him how truly worried she was and describes his action as terrible, so he apologizes, admitting that he exaggerated a little, but he insists that the pain he felt was real. Then he explains to her that the pain was not physical, but rather in his chest due to his intense desire to see her. Ayla is stunned and her cheeks flush, and she tells him that there is no use in saying such things now, so he assures her that he will tell her something even more pathetic. He expresses bitterly that even when he confesses his feelings with all his heart, she still thinks all of that is just a lie. So she responds to him, asking if the girl, who was ignored for 8 years, is not more pathetic. So the Emperor admits with regret that that was his mistake and apologizes to her sincerely. He acknowledges that regardless of what happened, he should never have hurt her, admitting that he was truly a coward. He continues, expressing his deep remorse for his flight and rejection of her throughout that period when he left her alone. The Emperor tells her that he does not expect her to accept him, and that he does not mind her making him suffer or treating him harshly. He suggests to her that she ignore him until her anger subsides, just as he did with her in the past, and promises her that he will confess his love to her every day from now on. Then he looks directly into her eyes and confesses his love to her, apologizing for being so late in saying that, so Ayla is moved and tears well up in her eyes. The Emperor strokes her head gently, so she wipes her tears, expressing how frustrated she is with the situation. She thinks to herself that she was planning to take revenge on him if he confessed to her again, but her plan has failed now. Then she warns him seriously that this is the last time he does something like this. She adds in a jokingly threatening tone that if he repeats his action, she will travel to study abroad in a country full of handsome men. A smile brightens the Emperor's face, happy with her threat, which indicates her jealousy. In a spontaneous moment, he suddenly carries her in his arms as she screams from surprise. He embraces her tightly, expressing his intense love for her. After they sit together, Ayla warns him one last time that if he pretends to be injured again, she will make sure to truly break his bones next time, so the Emperor swallows nervously. Ayla thinks that that moment was the end of a long one-sided love and the beginning of a real love, but she was wrong, as things soon began to take a strange and unexpected turn. In one of the palace wings, her brother Elvin was anxiously searching for Emperor Rubros, who had disappeared from sight again. Elsewhere, Ayla's friends were searching for her too after she disappeared. And while Silka suggests that she might have gotten lost, Fontel denies that, asserting that Ayla knows the palace better than anyone. Fontel adds that even if she got lost, it is likely she is enjoying exploring new places and that there is no need to worry. But Randall searches for her anxiously, while Renee wonders where she could have gone and what she would do if the Duchess came looking for her. The group of ladies searching for Ayla is surprised by the appearance of Elvin and his sister before them. So Renee jokingly wonders if it is possible that the Emperor and Ayla are together, only for Elvin to reject this idea categorically. In the meantime, from behind a closed door, Ayla's voice is heard asking His Majesty if that piece is not allowed for her to move. In a secluded room, Ayla was playing chess with the Emperor, explaining to him that if he moves his piece to a certain place, he will lose his chance to win, so he seems understanding of her advice. The Emperor acknowledges the difficulty of the situation, but he surprises her with an unexpected move, taking her queen, which arouses her astonishment. Ayla seems frustrated and realizes she will lose again, so she comments on his skill, assuming he has great experience in the game, but he surprises her by revealing that this is the first time he has played chess, which arouses her deep admiration for how brilliant he is. His Majesty explains with a smile that when he focuses on ending the game quickly, he somehow wins every time. So Ayla asks him in confusion about the reason for his desire to end the matter so quickly. He looks at her deeply and tells her that the reason is that he prefers to focus on her instead of the game. Shyness overwhelms Ayla and she hides her face with her hands, expressing how embarrassed she is. So he smiles and describes her as cute. Elsewhere in the palace, Elvin was walking with his sister, so she notices that she has not seen this place before, to which Elvin explains to her that it is a rarely used part of the palace, and that it is the only area where His Majesty hides, asserting that he will be found soon. His sister describes His Majesty as a trapped mouse, so Elvin objects to this description, reminding her that the Emperor is the highest man in the Empire, but she reminds him that he had promised her in their childhood to become her knight and protect her. The other ladies hear this conversation, so Randall expresses her surprise and admiration that he had sworn such a vow, so Elvin admits that he had indeed said that once. Events return in memory to the past, when Elvin and Emperor Rubros were children training together in fencing with wooden swords. After they declare that they have become like brothers, young Rubros asks the young lady, Bianca, to call him Sir Rubros, so she wonders in surprise about this knight title. In the meantime, one of the ladies scolds young Elvin for allowing the crown prince to be injured, but another lady defends him, explaining that it was nothing more than playing with wooden swords and a simple bandage, and that she was the one who gave Elvin the set because they wanted to play the role of knights. The former emperor intervenes in the conversation, jokingly asking Bianca if Rubros has become her knight, and asks her to treat him kindly. Returning to the present, Bianca wonders whose idea it was to play the role of knights, so Elvin admits it was his idea, and they comment on how kind His Majesty and his family are. But Elvin warns Bianca of the need to be careful in her words about the Emperor, because anyone hearing this conversation might cause trouble. Randall points out that it must be the last room, expressing her lack of desire to become a criminal just for trying to protect her sister, so the other agrees with her, and suggests they enter. Elvin and his companions suddenly burst into the room, apologizing for this abrupt entry, so both Ayla and the Emperor are surprised by their presence. Elvin wonders what they are doing here exactly, so Bianca notices the chessboard and concludes they were playing. Ayla is seized by extreme confusion from this situation, and stammers while trying to explain, while signs of anger are clear on Elvin's face. The Emperor tries to calm Ayla and holds her hand, asking her to calm down and let him explain the situation. But Elvin explodes in anger, shouting in the Emperor's face, ordering him to take his hands off his sister, describing him as an impudent man, amidst the astonishment of the ladies who did not expect this reaction. The Emperor steps forward to stand in front of Ayla and apologizes for not telling everyone earlier, asserting that he was planning to do so soon. Then he holds Ayla's hand before them and seriously announces that Lady Ayla and he are sincerely dating. Elvin bristles with anger at this announcement, thinking of all the pain the Emperor caused his sister when he abandoned her and left her alone, and wonders how he dares now to claim serious intentions. Then he announces in a firm voice that this matter is completely unacceptable, and that the Wildenpiston family will never agree to his relationship with Ayla, and orders him not to approach her again. The Emperor tries to speak, but Elvin interrupts him, declaring that he does not want to hear the protecting Ayla justification again. He adds that even if that were true, it does not erase the pain she suffered, and that all he wishes for is the happiness of his sister who recently regained her smile. Elvin ends his firm conversation with the Emperor, asking him not to shake his sister's heart again, and vows that he will not allow her to taste the bitterness of sadness again, and he resolves to protect her smile no matter what the cost. Ayla is later seen sitting alone on a bench in the garden, letting out a deep sigh full of sorrow. Both Elvin and Bianca watch her closely, as Bianca reminds him of his vow to protect Ayla's happiness and smile, and draws his attention to the fact that she does not look happy at all. Rather, an atmosphere of gloom surrounds her. Bianca notices the extent of Ayla's frustration, so Elvin suggests that time is capable of solving everything if they wait long enough, but Bianca expresses her doubts about that. Bianca reflects on Ayla's past, thinking of 12 years of waiting, and wonders if this long wait wasn't enough for any heart. Elvin acknowledges within himself that he knows perfectly well that what his sister truly wants is to be by Rubros's side. But Bianca confronts him with the bitter truth, questioning how they can ignore the extent of the pain he caused her. So Elvin agrees with her, admitting that just remembering the matter makes him so angry that he sometimes wakes up from his sleep. Bianca reminds him of what is more important, which is the matter they both know very well. In another scene, Emperor Rubros stands before Ayla as she is sitting on the bench. It turns out that the most important thing for her brother is not revenge, but protecting his sister's joy, which manifests in her happiness as she receives a flower from the Emperor. A sincere and bright smile is written on Ayla's face as the Emperor returns her gazes full of happiness. The Emperor tells her that he brought her that flower because it reminds him of her, so she answers him with overwhelming happiness that she liked it very much. But their quiet moment is soon interrupted, as her brother Elvin appears suddenly, calling out to them, and Elvin says something to her, making joy be written on her face and making the Emperor feel surprised by the sudden change in Elvin's stance. Bianca smiles as she sees Elvin embracing his sister Ayla strongly and happily. The group gathers together, and Bianca expresses her pleasure because things went well in the end. Elsewhere, Ayla's two friends were enjoying sweets. So Renee asks Randall if those sweets weren't intended for Ayla. So Randall answers her that Ayla no longer needs them now, in an indication that she found her happiness with the Emperor. Suddenly, the Duke and Duchess of Wildenpiston appear, in addition to the Senior Emperor and the Empress, asking sternly what is happening. The Duchess scolds one of the young ladies for eating while walking, considering that that does not befit a noble lady, and the Empress adds with a tender smile that this reminds her of herself in the past, and advises her to be more careful because people are quick to judge, so the two young women apologize. The Duke and the Senior Emperor look at the scene with surprise, muttering in disbelief at what they see. The two young women realize that the elders have caught Ayla and Rubros sitting together in an intimate moment. The Duke and the Senior Emperor exchange conversation, expressing how happy they are to see Ayla and Rubros getting along together, and wondering if Rubros has finally confessed his feelings, noting that he seems more relaxed recently. The two young women realize that the elders are misunderstanding the situation, believing that what is between Ayla and Rubros is just friendship and reconciliation, not a love relationship. And they comment that the elders have not noticed the truth yet, but they expect that it is just a matter of time before everything is revealed. The next day at the Imperial Palace, an assistant was trying to prevent Emperor Rubros from leaving his seat again. The Emperor insists that he has urgent work, and his assistant tries to remind him of the visit of a delegation from a friendly country, but the Emperor assures him that he will return before evening falls, heading toward his important destination. The Emperor's assistant continues his wailing and pleas, complaining about the young lady's persistence in asking about His Majesty's disappearance, and begging him not to leave them alone to face the situation, while the Emperor glares at him with a cold and annoyed look, asserting that this annoyance is exactly the reason why he refuses to go. The Emperor explains sternly that he accomplishes all state affairs without any delay, but he prefers to avoid events that are limited to purely social obligations, while the assistant continues to hold on to his clothes, crying, begging him to attend this time only for his sake. The Emperor skillfully escapes from his assistant's grip and goes on his way, leaving the assistant falling to the ground screaming, calling out to His Majesty in a breakdown, describing what he is doing as something unforgivable. Away from that chaos, Ayla sits with the Emperor in a sunny room, where she shows her great admiration for the taste of the sweets. So the Emperor offers her to have his portion too, but she refuses politely, considering that inappropriate. And when he asks her about the reason, she answers him shyly that she fears gaining weight. The emperor reaches out his hand to gently stroke her face, commenting that her gaining weight would be a truly concerning matter, so Ayla is surprised by his words as he continues with overt flirting, explaining that she looks enchanting already and that he does not know what he would do if she became even more attractive and cute. Ayla's face burns with shyness and she asks him in confusion to stop teasing her, so the emperor laughs cheerfully, asserting that he was only joking, and apologizes to her, justifying it by saying that her extreme cuteness is what drives him to do that. This intimate moment is suddenly interrupted by a stern voice questioning what they are doing in such a place, as the two are surprised by the appearance of Duke Wildenpiston and the senior emperor accompanied by their wives, where Empress Abina comments with a smile on this renewed meeting. Ayla freezes in her place and wonders anxiously within herself whether they can find an excuse to justify their position, while the emperor sighs in resignation, acknowledging that their matter has undoubtedly been exposed. The Duke directs sharp and angry gazes toward his daughter Ayla, scolding her severely for her daring in monopolizing His Majesty the Emperor's precious time. The Duke continues his scolding, asserting that she should not obstruct someone burdened with state affairs, but Empress Abina intervenes with a calm smile, pointing out that the matter does not call for all this anger, and that it is joyful to see them getting along together as was the case in the past. The Duke bows with great respect, apologizing to the Emperor on behalf of his daughter, who is still immature in his words, for obstructing his precious time, but the Emperor refuses this apology politely, asking the Duke to raise his head immediately. The Emperor points out with gratitude that the Duke is not just a noble, but he is his teacher whom he considers a second father to him, recalling the principle that establishes that a teacher remains a teacher for life. The Duke jokes with Emperor Rubros, saying that adding a fourth son to his 3 sons would be a heavy burden, and the Duke apologizes to the Emperor, demanding that he be more aware of his many responsibilities. So Ayla apologizes in turn, and the senior Emperor comments on how warm the scene is seeing them close now. The senior Emperor smiles cunningly and reassures the Duke that the Emperor is not as busy as he thinks, adding confidently that he speaks from the reality of his past experience, while the Duke was thinking to himself that he was the one who bore the greatest burden of preoccupation because of that. And the Emperor mutters, justifying that everything has its side effects, while signs of annoyance appear on the Duke's face. The Empress takes advantage of this preoccupation and approaches Ayla to whisper to her kindly and with a warm smile, advising her to withdraw and flee from the place immediately. The Emperor raises his thumb, confirming that the escape route has become safe thanks to the mother's intervention, as signs of surprise and admiration appear on Ayla's face at this kind collusion. While Ayla and the Emperor sneak away, a sharp discussion breaks out between the Duke and the senior Emperor, as the latter blames the Duke because he was the one who told him beforehand to leave matters to him and return home, only for the Duke to respond angrily, explaining that he was explaining to him the principles of social welfare which are not granted without conditions, and accuses him of being the one who was unable to understand. The two succeed in escaping and moving out of sight, and Ayla whispers with relief, pointing out that they were able to get through the situation safely, for the Emperor to agree with her. Ayla laughs lightly, expressing her enjoyment of seeing her father and the senior Emperor arguing in that way for the first time, describing them as acting like children, which the Emperor completely agrees with. Ayla likens their actions to the Emperor's argument with her brother Elvin, so the Emperor initiates by jokingly pointing out to her that the scene was exactly like her and Elvin's way of quarreling. The two exchange looks full of friendliness, then burst together into a spontaneous and sincere laugh, reflecting the extent of the closeness and harmony they have reached. Later, events move to a hall crowded with guests. Ayla is surprised by a sudden call from her mother, the Duchess, who appears suddenly accompanied by the Duke, while the Emperor stands attentive following his mother, the Empress's clearing of her throat as she glared at him with a meaningful look. The Empress scolds her son sternly, warning him against constantly leaving his seat, and wonders if he is trying to sneak away again, considering that an emperor leaving his guests at his own party is inappropriate. The Duke supports the Empress's words, considering his action outside the bounds of etiquette, and points suspiciously to the fact that they are spending a long time together lately, questioning sharply if they are trying to sneak away together again. The Emperor and Ayla are struck by profound shock from this direct accusation, and they rush to defend themselves with a simultaneous and categorical denial, in which signs of extreme confusion appear. The Duke narrows his eyes with clear suspicion at their exaggerated denial, while the two drown in a cold sweat, realizing within themselves that their secret may have just been exposed before their families. The Emperor surrenders to the status quo and lowers his head with tension, and was on the verge of confessing. But the Duchess interrupted him and said that it seems as if she had misjudged, so the emperor appears in a state of confusion. The senior emperor and the empress consider the situation a funny misunderstanding, and they laugh as they remember the days of their youth and dating, assuming the young duo were trying to sneak away from the party. But the Duke looks at them sternly, reminding everyone that they have become adults now and must exercise extreme caution in their actions, causing Ayla tension while the Emperor stands quietly. While the Emperor and Ayla move out of sight, she laughs in confusion, pointing out that they were able to get through the situation smoothly again, and the Emperor jokes with her that their continuing in this way might make them succeed in hiding their matter forever, expressing his surprise at no one noticing their relationship until now. The Emperor smiles confidently and reassures her that he is by her side and there is no need to worry, suggesting they pretend they were tidying their appearance or looking for a lost friend to justify their absence. Everyone returns to the party hall, where the elders of the two families stand together in harmony, and the senior emperor expresses his happiness to see the youth have grown up and become dependable, suggesting that they too go on a tour to restore memories of the past. Meanwhile, Ayla's friends hide behind one of the pillars, and Randall breathes a sigh of relief for their narrow escape from being with the elders, and Renee suggests staying away from them for a while. Daniel suddenly appears behind them, wondering about the reason for their presence there. So one of them answers him that just imagining being involved in a gathering of the elders gives her a headache. Daniel asks them in surprise about the reason for them not entering the party hall. Instead of leaving him, Randall covers his mouth and they pull him away with them, and she orders him to follow them in complete silence without causing any commotion. Then they reach a secluded corner of the palace garden. While Randall confirms that the place is safe and no one will come to it, Daniel asks the two girls anxiously and in confusion about the reason for this sudden action, so Renee orders him to be completely quiet, announcing that they have a very important matter they must tell him. And Randall tells Daniel that Ayla and His Majesty Emperor Rubros are already dating. In a shocking moment, the Duke, the Duchess, the senior emperor, and his wife emerge from among the bushes behind them, while Renee was sternly telling them to lower their voices despite the emptiness of the place. Signs of shock and amazement appear on the elders' faces upon hearing the news of Ayla and the emperor dating. The group of youth freezes in their places from the horror of the surprise, and the two girls realize that the place was not safe at all as they thought. The Duke steps forward with angry and terrifying features, concluding that since they heard the conversation, it is likely that there are other people who heard it too, and demands an exact explanation from Daniel of the meaning of this talk. The Empress and the Duchess intervene to calm the situation, pointing out that there is no need to blame anyone now, and suggest that if what they heard is true, they must face Ayla and the Emperor and speak with them directly. The Duke agrees to the proposal with features covered by a dark aura and decides to postpone this confrontation until after the party ends, while the senior emperor concludes that the night will be very long and difficult. In another corner of the palace, the Emperor and Ayla stand before her room, where Ayla confesses that the day was nerve-wracking from its beginning to its end, but she nevertheless enjoyed her time. The Emperor looks at her and points out with a smile that he protected her again today, and therefore he believes he deserves a reward in return. So Ayla asks him curiously what kind of reward he wants. The Emperor approaches her and holds her hands intimately, and soft whispers pass between them about how close they are to each other at that moment. But this romantic moment suddenly vanishes upon hearing a voice inside. The Emperor demands to know who is standing there. The Emperor turns to find the Duke standing in the dark, his gazes piercing them with intensity and extreme anger. The Emperor tries to handle the situation and protect Ayla, claiming to the Duke that what he sees is just a misunderstanding. But the Duke repeats the word with disapproval and complete coldness. Ayla is terrified and steps forward, trying to justify the situation herself, and pleads with her father to listen to her, asserting that things are not as he thinks. The Duke looks at her with raging anger, questioning sharply if they consider him a fool to believe these weak justifications. And he interrupts them firmly, asking them to save their excuses because he has learned the full truth. So the Emperor stands in front of Ayla in an attempt to protect her from her father's anger. The Duke scolds the Emperor with harsh words, considering that a man sneaking into the ladies' quarters is inappropriate, and that this man being the Emperor makes the matter completely unacceptable. The Duke continues scolding them, accusing them of not realizing their status and lacking the lowest levels of responsibility and reason, and warns them against confusing physical maturity with true adulthood. Without any other introductions, the Duke grabs Ayla's wrist forcefully, pulling her with him, declaring that the discussion has ended and she will accompany him immediately. while she screams, calling him in shock. The Emperor desperately tries to catch Ayla, extending his hand toward her while asking her to wait. Duke Wildenpiston stands with features covered in raging anger and sternness. The Emperor calls out Ayla's name emotionally, while the Duke holds his daughter's arm firmly and pulls her away from the place. Ayla wonders in confusion and anxiety, directing her speech to her father about the destination he is taking her to in this way. The Duke answers her in a definitive tone and a face not devoid of anger, asserting that they will return home immediately. As soon as they arrive, the Duke issues a strict order in which he strictly forbids Ayla from crossing the threshold of the house or leaving it starting from that day, causing her shock. Ayla protests strongly with tears filling her eyes, describing this decision as unreasonable and reminding him that she is no longer a child of 12, but has become an adult woman. The Duke turns to her over his shoulder and replies coldly that sneaking in secret to avoid others' eyes has nothing to do with the actions of adults. And he adds firmly, warning her against even thinking about leaving the house without explicit permission from him. Before closing the door forcefully behind him, Ayla stands alone in her room in utter amazement, muttering in disbelief that her father cannot be serious in this decision of his. Meanwhile, Elvin, Bianca, and her mother notice the change in the charged atmosphere and wonder anxiously if Ayla will be all right after what happened. Her mother points out that this is the very first time the Duke has placed Ayla under house arrest, reflecting the gravity of the situation. The two ladies jokingly wonder if there is a hidden romantic character behind this house arrest, but Elvin is annoyed by their talk, considering it just an act from an overprotective father, and asserts seriously that this is not the time for telling jokes. Returning to the Imperial Palace, the Emperor stands in his private suite, where the door opens suddenly for his assistant, Marquis Vice Roden, to enter, calling His Majesty. The Emperor surprises him by throwing a piece of cloth on his head as soon as he enters, making the man wonder in confusion and disapproval what His Majesty is doing exactly. The Emperor expresses his dissatisfaction with the clothes brought to him, considering them completely inappropriate, and asks his assistant to bring something more elegant and sophisticated. The assistant looks at him with expressionless features, reminding him that there is a grand banquet currently being held, and disapproving that the choice of clothes is all that occupies him at this time. The Emperor justifies his interest in his appearance by saying that he desperately needs to leave a good and impactful impression on a certain person, pointing out that this person possesses a very conservative nature, and adds with dramatic emotion that that man is very stubborn, but at the same time he is his teacher and hero for whom he holds all respect, meaning Duke Wildenpiston. The assistant stares at him, silently for moments, before acknowledging in resignation that the Emperor's point of view is not entirely wrong given the situation. The Emperor continues throwing clothes aside in a hurry, declaring that there is no time to waste, and demanding his assistant help him to look in his most splendid and most dignified and prestigious appearances ever on that day. Thanks to these quick preparations, the Emperor wears his full official uniform to stand finally in his full elegance and royal prestige. The Emperor issues his orders to prepare a carriage drawn by the fastest horses immediately, prompting the assistant to wonder in surprise about the reason for his wearing this full official uniform. While Ayla's two friends talk with Daniel about Ayla's sudden disappearance, suggesting the reason is the exposure of her and the Emperor's matter, and thinking that they perhaps must offer an apology. Daniel tries to calm them, asserting that there is nothing certain yet, but he soon asks them with tension and confusion about the way they intend to handle this complicated situation. The Emperor emerges with steady and fast steps, while his assistant runs behind him, asking in shock if he is going to attend a funeral, and reminding him that there is a formal meeting scheduled between two families. The Emperor answers him with stern features, pointing out that matters may indeed turn into something like a funeral in the end. The assistant asks in horror about the identity of the owner of that funeral, to which the Emperor replies with extreme coldness that it will be his own funeral. The assistant loses his mind and screams in terror, wondering what His Majesty has just uttered, while the Emperor continues his steady walk toward the carriage where the guards direct him to its path. The Emperor turns toward his assistant with a calm and firm smile, asking him to pray for his safe return, for the assistant to plead with him in a breakdown not to utter such ominous words. The Emperor's royal carriage sets off after he issues the orders to move, as the driver responds in obedience and the horses stir immediately. As the carriage proceeds on its way, swaying through the paths, the Emperor becomes absorbed in his thoughts while looking out the window in silence. His memory takes him back to his early childhood days, where he stood in the training courtyard watching with intense focus and fascination. Duke Wildenpiston, in his youth, was launching successive attacks toward the young Emperor. The little one tries to summon his magic to form a glowing golden shield to block his attacks. The boy clenches his teeth and exerts a great effort to maintain the magical shield while receiving a powerful blow that causes magical shards to scatter as a result. The little one stands panting from exhaustion while the Duke approaches him with calm steps. The Duke points with his glowing finger to explain to his student how he managed to deflect the attack with just one finger, in a sign of his strength. The Duke wonders about the secret behind this extreme importance of defense, considering that the attack must precede it, and tells him that this thinking proves he is still clinging to his ambition and impulsiveness. The boy insists on his opinion that it is better to eliminate the enemy first, but the Duke explains to him with wisdom that a ruler can never predict the timing or location of an attack, and this is the true burden that falls upon the emperor. The boy becomes agitated, asserting that he will initiate the attack as soon as he sees a suspicious person, which arouses the Duke's resentment, who scolds him, wondering how he can claim the first strike when he doesn't even know the identity of his enemy in the first place. The little one clings to his opinion with confidence, describing whoever does not realize this simple matter as a fool. So the Duke confronts him with a biting question about whether he considers his father, the former emperor, a fool for being betrayed by his relatives. The boy answers him stubbornly, asserting that he believes so, only to immediately receive a light disciplinary strike on his head from the Duke that made him scream in pain. The Duke glares at him with a stern look, ordering him to weigh his words well and not to rush. Then the Duke bends down and whispers in the boy's ear, acknowledging that his father, Johann, was indeed a fool, but he emphasizes to him the necessity of keeping this matter a secret between them and not allowing anyone to hear it. The boy's eyes widen in shock and amazement, and he wonders in disbelief if his father was truly a fool. The Duke confirms this with a calm smile, explaining that his father was naive to the point of believing the good in others without any questioning. The Duke adds, looking at the sky, that naivety caused his father to be harmed many times, but he remarked that Johann was lucky to be surrounded by many kind souls. The Duke smiles with nostalgia, remembering the past, and admits that Johann was the first person to make him realize that naivety was not pure foolishness. A warm smile is written on the boy's face when he realizes the depth of respect and love his teacher holds for his late father. The Duke returns to assert firmly, addressing him as a father and teacher, that considering what Johann went through, trusting anyone is in itself a great risk. Memories transition to narrate how Johann used to always repeat that the royal family is a place stained with blood. As the legitimate son, Johann was always like a thorn in the side of his other brothers, who harbored hatred and plots against him. Despite that, Johann believed that if he exerted enough effort, his sincere feelings would reach them, which prompted him to offer gifts with a smile, trying to win their affection. But his brothers used to mock those innocent expectations and were accustomed to deceiving him and manipulating him constantly without mercy. This situation continued with everyone except for one person, as Johann used to spend his time alone reading until sleep overcame him. He remembers how his younger brother Teal approached him while he was sleeping to offer him a wooden toy as a gift, only for Johann to wake up and be overwhelmed with happiness. For him, Teal was the only person he could trust in this palace. The memories show how Johann and Teal used to run together with innocent smiles, holding each other's hands amidst the cruelty of the cold royal family palace. The young Duke used to watch their laughter with joy and harmony, but the narration explains that this close bond is what made what happened later more cruel, painful, and unimaginable. The threads of the conspiracy unfold, as everyone secretly conspired to kill the legitimate wife and Johann, and the hands of darkness appear slipping poison into the wineglass in secret. Johann's features take on seriousness and sternness, as he realizes that the main instigator who stood at the heart of that despicable conspiracy was none other than Teal's mother. The emperor recalls the memories of his father, Johann, when he witnessed his mother coughing blood and falling dead before him, only to realize in that cruel moment that the purity and sincerity he possessed were worthless and could not protect the people he loves. Following that, Johann quickly liquidated all his conspiring brothers with his blood-stained hands, excluding his younger brother Teal. Thus, after removing all obstacles, Johann was crowned and ascended the throne to become the emperor. But after those bloody events, his relationship with his brother Teal was no longer as it was before, and was touched by coldness and estrangement. The Duke explains to the young emperor that even after Johann became emperor, he remained cautious and watchful toward Teal. But matters took a different path when Rubros was born, where Teal showed overwhelming joy and great happiness, as if Rubros were his own child. The Duke remembers that scene clearly even now, describing it as a beautiful and peaceful sight that inspires reassurance. The Duke admits that at that very moment, a thought occurred to him for the first time that trusting someone might not always be a wrong choice. Young Rubros listens to his teacher's talk and concludes with an innocent smile that his uncle Teal is a truly kind person. But the Duke, placing his hand on the boy's head, wonders whether Teal was indeed a kind person or if he was just skilled at hiding his True feelings. The Duke explains to his student that this is exactly the reason for his training him, advising him that he can trust others, but he should not raise the ceiling of his expectations too much. Young Rubros expresses how difficult this matter is for him. The Duke smiles calmly, explaining to him that this difficulty is the true price for sitting on the throne of the empire. Events return to the present, where Emperor Rubros sits with the Duke, who wonders coldly if His Majesty has come only to narrate an old story. The Duke sips tea and continues his talk sternly, pointing out that even if the Emperor bowed and begged for permission to date his daughter, that would not be enough, and he wonders about the significance of touching upon the royal family's history now. The Emperor answers him with serious features and a piercing look, asserting that this story represents a very important lesson. The Emperor adds that there is a hidden matter that the Duke is completely ignorant of. The Duke is surprised by this statement and asks with interest about the nature of this hidden matter. The Emperor reveals that this matter concerns his uncle Teal. Events return again to review Rubros's childhood, where he was running happily, calling his uncle to show him something, while Teal was sitting in harmony with his father, Johann, and the Duke. Teal strokes young Rubros's head with tenderness and comments with a smile that the child is very attached to him. Young Rubros expresses with a bright smile his admiration for his uncle, describing him as his father's friend and a very kind person. Teal smiles with a mysterious look and responds kindly, considering describing him as a kind person a wonderful compliment that he values. Memories follow to show how Teal used to spend his time with young Rubros, accompanying him on his walks and helping him in his studies in the library, and how he used to share his training with wooden swords and amaze him by using his magical abilities to create glowing balls that made the little one happy. On one occasion, Rubros presents a work he completed to Teal, who praises him greatly, predicting for him that he will become a respected emperor like his father. Young Rubros's eyes shine with joy and pride at this praise, asking enthusiastically if he truly thinks so. But these quiet days soon turn around, as an image appears of Rubros falling into a deep sleep at night, while his room door slowly opens for an unknown person to enter in the darkness, portending an imminent danger. The Emperor recalls in his memory that night when a mysterious person slipped into his room in the darkness of the night and opened a wooden box to take out a wooden soldier doll, then used a sharp tool to intentionally damage it. The next morning, young Rubros woke up to find the box next to his bed and was surprised when he opened it to discover that the soldier doll he cherished was broken, which caused him great bewilderment. A strange feeling came over him as he remembered that it was perfectly intact until yesterday, which prompted him to wonder if what happened was just a passing accident. While he was drowned in his thoughts, his uncle Teal suddenly appeared and asked him what was wrong with him. Rubros hurried to close the box, claiming with a feigned smile that there was nothing to worry about. His uncle showed his understanding and encouraged him to do his best in his training, placing his hand on his shoulder. Rubros thanked him, but he noticed that his uncle's grip was uncomfortably strong, in a subtle sign not devoid of threat. This was not the first incident of its kind, as soon the things Rubros cherished began to be destroyed and damaged one after another, from his training sword to his favorite pen. The matter reached the point of finding his pet killed, so he realized then that what was happening was not just negligence on his part. Rather, there is someone who intends to do that on purpose. His suspicions led him to sneak into the palace corridors, to witness with his own eyes one of the servants handing his uncle Teal one of his stolen possessions. Shock took hold of him, and the horrific truth began to unfold before him bit by bit. And his suspicions were confirmed when he heard his uncle coldly ordering the servant to get rid of that piece. Young Rubros stands stunned, realizing that his uncle Teal, the person he trusted, is the one behind all this pain. He realized then that his father, the Emperor, had trusted his brother until the end, without knowing of his betrayal. He recalled his innocent memories with his uncle, and how his father used to treat them as one family, making a resolution within himself that he will never forgive him for this deed of his. With the passing of time, Rubros learned to hide his true feelings, so he used to smile in his uncle's face while harboring hatred and contempt for him in secret, deciding in himself that the time has not yet come to reveal his intentions. He realized the extent of Teal's influence and his ability to manipulate everyone, so he dedicated his time to training and building his strength, vowing that he will end this matter with his own hands. So he immersed himself in arduous training and studying military maps, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. In the midst of being absorbed in his training, a familiar voice interrupted him as little Ayla appeared in the garden calling out to him. He turned toward her to find her standing before him, so she rushed to him and embraced him happily, questioning the reason for his presence in the palace at this time. She told him that she did not come with her father this time, but specifically asked him to allow her to visit him because she missed him. So she reminded him of his promise to her that she could visit him at any time she wished. So he laughed and patted her head tenderly, agreeing with her words. While they were walking together in the great imperial forest, he noticed that she seemed happy to be there, to tell him with a bright smile that the reason for her love for this place is that it is the location where she met him for the first time, which aroused his astonishment. Little Ayla completes her talk with an innocent smile and overwhelming happiness, explaining that the reason for her deep love for the great imperial forest is that it is the place where she met his beloved highness, and that she therefore considers it her favorite place ever. Young Rubros smiles in turn and tells her that thanks to her, he believes that he will love this place more and more. Then he asks her if she shares the same feeling, so she answers him immediately that she of course does. While they were walking together hand in hand in the sunny forest, they exchange looks of happiness, but these innocent moments are soon interrupted as Rubros returns to his bitter reality, realizing his uncle's hidden intentions. His uncle Teal was watching him from afar with a cunning smile, believing that the little one had already fallen in love, unaware that Rubros was fully aware of his deception. Rubros's features stiffen and his eyes glow with suppressed anger, resolving to confront this threat. One day, while Ayla was approaching him enthusiastically to suggest playing together, he surprised her with his categorical and cold refusal, leaving her in a state of shock and pain. And he told her with sad and firm features that he no longer had time to play with her anymore. When she asked him the reason with tears welling in her eyes, he answered her that the reason was that he is the crown prince. Then he turned his back on her, walking away, explaining that there are matters more important than just a prince. In a sign of his responsibilities and the dangers surrounding him, he left her standing alone, calling him in a low voice, while he went to dedicate himself to his archery training. For her part, Ayla misunderstood his distancing and thought sadly that he must be so busy that all this gloom appears on his face. In fact, she decided to ask her father if someone was exhausting His Highness in this way. While Rubros was watching her as she walked away, he swore to himself that he would not allow anyone to touch her with harm. So he immersed himself in his training intensely, vowing that he would protect her no matter what the cost. With the passing of years, he continued to ignore her at public events. At one of the balls, Ayla called him, but he turned his face away from her intentionally, so she remained standing with features covered in sadness, while he maintained his cold and distant appearance. In one of the training sessions, he rushed toward his teacher with all his strength for an immense magical wave to launch from the courtyard. It aroused the astonishment of his teacher, who smiled with admiration, while Rubros rose with features full of determination. The arduous training continued as Rubros demonstrated his new strength that he acquired after long years before his teacher, leaving behind traces of destruction in the training courtyard, which aroused the astonishment of his teacher. After the training ended, his teacher praised him for the extent of the development he achieved. As a token of celebration, he offered to fulfill one wish for him and to ask him for anything he wanted. But Rubros's thoughts were hung on Ayla, so he answered that he wanted nothing, thinking in himself that once everything is over, he will tell the Duke the truth directly. So he told him that he would inform him of his wish at a later time, begging him to listen to him then. After he became a strong young man, Rubros stood ready, realizing that the preparations were complete. In a decisive meeting, he faced his uncle Teal, who commented mockingly that he never expected that Rubros would be the one to suggest this meeting. Emperor Rubros suggests to his uncle Teal, making a deal between them. So Teal seems surprised and wonders about the nature of this deal. Rubros boldly announces that he challenges him to a formal duel and places a decisive bet, asserting that in the event of his uncle's victory, he will abdicate the imperial throne to him. Teal's eyes shine with greed, and he asks him in return what will happen if Rubros wins. So Rubros answers him firmly that in the case of his victory, his uncle will have to leave the imperial palace forever. Teal smiles mockingly and agrees to the offer, considering it a proposal he likes. Then he coldly announces the start of the duel, warning Rubros to try as much as possible not to die. Rubros, in turn, confirms the start of the confrontation with features covered in seriousness. But Teal suddenly disappears from before him and directs a strike that hits the Emperor with a superficial wound. And the Emperor realizes that Teal has decided to attack with full force from the beginning, but he thinks to himself that this is exactly what he was waiting for, and that this moment is what he had been anticipating all the time. And when he thought he had trapped him in his snare, Teal launched a powerful magical attack, but the other managed to block the attack, using his magical shield. Teal laughs victoriously as he urges him to continue, while the Emperor thinks in himself that there was no need for all this feeling of guilt with which he was tormenting himself. Rubros forms a magical shield to deflect the attack and succeeds in evading the blow skillfully. Teal stops the attack and asks him mockingly about the reason for his not initiating the attack, but Rubros replies to him coldly, wondering if this is all he has. Teal bristles with anger at his belittling and describes him as an arrogant scoundrel before launching another attack. Rubros thinks to himself that this is enough and that it is time to end this confrontation. Teal Teal is surprised by magical chains launching from the ground and wrapping around his body forcefully, restricting his movement completely. So he falls on his knees screaming in pain while Rubros stands victorious before him. Teal laughs bitterly, admitting that blood does not lie, and describes him as the monster with red eyes. And with a cold look and a glowing red eye, Rubros demands him to leave as he promised. So Teal agrees with a cunning smile. In the throne hall, the former emperor asks Teal if he is serious about leaving the imperial palace. So Teal answers him that he learned a lot from the crown prince, and that he wishes to leave the palace to learn more about the outside world. While he was preparing to leave, the young emperor ordered him in himself to be silent and hurry in going. The former emperor ends his talk with Teal, while an image of Ayla smiling happily resonates in Rubros's mind, and he realizes that he has finally achieved his goal. The emperor grants Teal permission to leave, announcing that he will bear the name Kelton, and that as a member of the imperial lineage, he will receive a title and sufficient financial resources to maintain his status and dignity. Rubros watches his uncle as he walks away with steady steps, realizing that everything has truly ended. After that decisive confrontation, Rubros stood alone in the training courtyard panting and felt relief and liberation. He believed that once his uncle left, everything would end. While he was drowned in his thoughts, Ayla appeared before him calling him, so he turned toward her in surprise. Calling her name, she approached him shyly and told him that she had a request she wanted to ask of him. Then she asked him if he would accept to be her partner in her debutante ball. He hesitated and turned his back on her, apologizing that he could not, thinking in himself that he cannot answer yet. But she smiled and asked him again while she realized the reason for his hesitation. For he believed that once Teal left for good, he would be able to answer her request. Rubros ignored her and ordered her not to talk to him, but he was thinking that she only had to wait for a little while longer. Ayla noticed that he had taken her letter, so happiness overwhelmed her, and she jumped for joy, expressing how happy she was. After a while, Teal's carriage left the imperial palace under heavy guard. Rubros was watching from afar and thinking in himself that the matter had finally ended, and that now he can finally confess his feelings to Ayla, and that he would tell her everything on the day of her debutante ball, thinking about the extent of the surprise she would feel. He sat to write a letter, determined to tell her of his love and that his one-sided feelings will finally reach their end. In the meantime, the young noblewomen were arriving at the palace in preparation for the ball. Ayla was getting out of her carriage, with a radiant smile and her heart pounding intensely. Rubros was waiting for her, imagining the moment he would see her, but he suddenly heard a strange sound from outside, to realize that there was something suspicious happening. He looked out the window to find a group of assassins surrounding the palace. He did not hesitate for a moment, so he created a magical shield to protect himself, as the assassins were surrounding him from every side, ready to attack. Rubros senses a strange and disturbing feeling, and wonders about its source, and whether his uncle Teal is the one standing behind this matter. The fight continues, and Rubros parries a deadly attack. Rubros wonders in himself about the identity of this enemy, and what he will do if he knows it, but he realizes that the most important thing now is to end this fight quickly. In the meantime, Ayla arrives at the ball hall and searches for him among the attendees, thinking that he will be there. But instead, she hears the whispers of the noblewomen who are mocking her, and wondering about the source of her confidence in trying to dance with the emperor. And their mockery continues, describing her as clingy and not realizing how she could imagine herself as his partner. So Ayla realizes bitterly that in their eyes, and in His Highness's eyes, she is just a person who is naturally an object of mockery. In another place, the fight continues, and Rubros manages to eliminate the last of the attackers. He stands among their corpses, realizing that the matter has ended. He looks from the window at the lit palace and thinks that she has waited for him for a long time, so he decides to hurry to reach her. But he suddenly stops before the mirror, realizing that the blood of the fight is still on his face. So he is confused when he hears Ayla's voice calling him, so he hides the corpses of the assassins away, and he desperately tries to remove the traces of blood, wondering what on earth he should do. At that moment, Ayla opens the door calling him, to find him standing in a state of chaos. And Ayla tells him she is exhausted from this relationship, and that she will fulfill his wish that she disappear from before him forever. While he was wondering in himself if she had seen what happened, then he remembers her words when she told him that she was fed up with this one-sided love, and memories follow when she promised him that she would not appear before him again, and she wished him cryingly to find a wonderful lady. He remembers all that with pain, and calls her name in a low voice. He realized then that the matter had not ended yet, and that as long as she stayed by his side, she would never be safe. So he resolved to become the emperor, and control everything, to ensure that no one could touch her. And he vows in himself that as soon as everything becomes perfect, he will confess his love to her. Events return to the present, where Ayla sits crying as she calls him and realizes how difficult the matter was for him. So she embraces him tightly, expressing the extent of the pain he must have felt while carrying all this burden alone. So he holds her to him gently and tells her that all that matters to him is her safety. But this intimate moment is interrupted when the Duke sees this scene. So he rises angrily and orders Ayla to move away from him immediately. Duke Wildenpiston bristles with anger and scolds Emperor Rubros severely, questioning how he dares to offer excuses after all the pain and suffering he inflicted on his daughter. And the Duke did not settle for words. Rather, he launched a mighty wave of glowing blue magical energy, warning him against the belief that forgiveness will be granted to him so easily. Rubros receives the powerful blow that pushes him back, trying to withstand this sweeping magical attack while moaning from the intensity of the pressure. In the midst of this attack, his teacher, the Duke's previous teachings resonate in Rubros's mind, remembering his words that a truly strong man is not the one who initiates the attack, but the one who maintains his calm and steadfastness even when subjected to attack. The Duke continues his magical pressure with firm and angry features, wondering if the Emperor has finally realized this lesson. Rubros stays firm in his place and surrounds himself with a golden magical shield to deflect the attack, announcing confidently that for the sake of beloved Ayla, he will not retreat, but will defend until the end. So the Duke tells him that his old advice did not mean this specific situation. This violent magical collision leads to the shattering of the room's windows, for the Duke to suddenly stop the attack and tell him sternly that this was not his only mistake. The Duke approaches him with steady steps and piercing looks, asserting that his greatest mistake was much further than that. And the Duke explodes in anger, questioning the reason that prevented him from telling him and the former Emperor Johann that Teal was a traitor plotting against them. Rubros lowers his gaze, remembering his uncle's cunning, and explains that Teal was planning very carefully for a long time, and that even if a child like him had raised suspicions then, Teal had already prepared countless ways to escape and survive. Rubros clenches his hand forcefully, showing that he made a decision of the necessity of acquiring strength first, until he became capable of standing in his face and confronting him. The Duke looks at him with eyes full of shock and amazement, wondering if he had made this risk-laden decision entirely alone. Rubros confirms that, pointing out that his father, his teacher the Duke, and his uncle Teal were old friends, and therefore he believed he was the most suitable person to bear the burden of this revenge and rid them of this danger. Silence hangs over the room, and the two men exchange deep looks, while Ayla stands watching them with anxiety and tension. The Duke lets out a deep sigh, and his features have softened a little, admitting that Rubros has truly grown and matured before he realized that. But he directs him sincere fatherly advice, warning him against bearing all the burdens alone, and reminding him that there are people who care for him and worry about him. For Rubros to answer him that he realizes that well, Rubros turns toward Ayla with a soft smile and tells the Duke that now he possesses someone he must protect too. Ayla is surprised by his words that touch her heart, and her cheeks flush with shyness and happiness, while Rubros looks at her with clear affection before her father's eyes. This moment is interrupted by the entry of Ayla's mother, the Duchess, who opens the door with a calm smile, wondering in amazement at what happened in the place, as the room was in a state of total chaos, with broken glass and smashed furniture scattered in it as a result of the magical engagement. The Duke is extremely confused and breaks into a sweat, stammering while trying to find a justification for his wife for what befell the room. But Rubros surprises everyone by bowing deeply in respect, offering his deep and sincere apology to the Duchess, and hurries to invent an excuse to save the situation, claiming that he misjudged his strength while trying to show the extent of his development in the martial arts that the Duke taught him, and that he had gone too far in that unintentionally. The Duchess places her hand on her, mouth in clear surprise at the Emperor's action and justification. Rubros continues his apology, placing his hand on his chest, vowing to compensate for all the things that were destroyed, and even offering to search for rare pieces from abroad to fix what he spoiled. The Duchess steps toward him kindly, expressing her wonder at the Emperor's bowing in this way, and reminding him that she always told him to stand tall and never bow his head. Rubros raises his head with calm features, explaining that he does not see the matter that way. Then he bows his head again, admitting that he carries in his heart a real and deep regret for hurting their precious daughter throughout those years, making Ayla deeply moved and suppressing her tears. The Duchess extends her hand to stroke Rubros's cheek with great maternal tenderness, expressing her pure thanks to him for his love and interest in Ayla. Rubros's eyes widen in surprise and emotion from this kindness and tolerance, while Ayla stands looking at him and her heart beats with deep love and overflowing feelings that cannot be described. The Duke and his wife announce that they will leave the place at that moment, but the Duke directs a final warning to the Emperor not to think that the matter has ended at this point, before his wife intervenes to silence him and pull him away to end the situation. Once the place is empty for them, Ayla notices some dirt on the Emperor's clothes, so her hand extends kindly to clean it, and she asks him anxiously whether he is all right. So he exchanges with her a look full of tenderness and reassures her with a smile that he is fine. Their privacy is suddenly interrupted by a voice from behind the door, for it to turn out that Elvin and Bianca were listening to all that went on, and Bianca announces that they accept the Emperor's apology too. Ayla's brother tries to protest excitedly, but Bianca pulls him away, asserting that things are fine, to end their sudden intervention. The Emperor and Ayla exchange broad smiles full of relief and happiness for passing this difficult situation safely. Thus they thought they had passed an enormous obstacle safely, leaving behind them the room that chaos encompasses. The atmosphere later transitions to a formal dining banquet enveloped in a tense silence, where the Emperor and Ayla sit accompanied by the Senior Emperor and the Empress. The Senior Emperor breaks this heavy silence, pointing out that there is another matter His Majesty seems to have been hiding from them. Features of tension and anticipation appear clearly on Ayla and the Emperor's faces following this direct hint. The Senior Emperor continues his talk seriously, expressing his shock at his hiding such a very important matter from them, and the Empress sighs in turn, showing her extreme disappointment in Ayla as well for her participation in this concealment. The two feel deep guilt toward this reproach, so they hurry to offer their apology with sincerity and regret. The Emperor starts explaining, justifying that he was certain of the matter, but he lacked sufficient evidence. And because he was a child then, he saw that the time was too early to take any action, and asserts firmly and excitedly that he is capable of handling his uncle's matter himself, pointing out that he dedicated all this time to building the necessary strength to achieve that goal. The eyes of the Senior Emperor and his wife widen in total shock and confusion from this unexpected talk, and the Senior Emperor wonders in great surprise about the reason for inserting the matter of his uncle Teal into this conversation suddenly. The Emperor and Ayla are shocked by this response, and their features freeze in extreme confusion, realizing the misunderstanding that just occurred. The Empress smiles cunningly and explains that what they were wondering about in reality is a different matter, and reveals that the matter concerns the relationship of the Emperor and Ayla, making Ayla's face burn red from the intensity of shyness and surprise. The Empress continues laughing that they already know about their dating, but their extreme concealment is what aroused their curiosity to know more, while the Emperor wonders in confusion about the significance of this talk. The Senior Emperor poses his question with complete calm, inquiring about their future plans for marriage, which strikes the Emperor in shock and amazement. Ayla is terrified and covers her flushed face in shyness from the impact of the word marriage, while the Emperor stammers, trying to absorb the sudden situation. The Emperor returns with serious features to raise the topic of Teal again. The Senior Emperor wonders whether the Emperor's talk about trusting him was just a passing remark. For the Senior Emperor to confirm to him his complete seriousness in his bearing that responsibility. The Emperor settles the matter, considering that this confirmation is sufficient and satisfying for him. So the Senior Emperor smiles a calm smile, acknowledging that the Emperor is the one who chose this path himself. The Senior Emperor raises the teacup, announcing his complete trust in him, then suddenly directs his talk toward Ayla. Features of relief appear on the Emperor's face, while Ayla responds to the Senior Emperor's call with tension and anticipation. The Senior Emperor directs a piercing and serious look at her, to surprise her with a direct and shocking question about the time when they can expect to see grandchildren. Ayla is struck by an overwhelming shock for which her face turns red in shyness, and calls her father in extreme amazement and confusion, while features of tension and surprise are clear on Emperor Rubros's face following this sudden question. The Senior Emperor bursts into a loud and spontaneous laugh, showing his great enjoyment of their two reactions, and pointing out that this is exactly what makes talking with youth a matter of great fun and entertainment for him. The Empress intervenes with a calm and soft smile, and asks her husband explicitly to stop teasing her and embarrassing them in this way. Thus, and in light of these warm and cheerful atmospheres that prevailed at the dining table, the two realize that they have indeed managed to pass that enormous obstacle and difficult situation safely and securely.